Chapter 351, Actual Battlefield. The next morning, Ryan was awakened by the phone. The phone call was an international long-distance call from Taobao. Ryan's parents had already arrived at their destination, so now they made a long-distance call to report safety. After speaking for a while, Ryan hung up the phone and got up to have breakfast. Now he can finally take out some things when his parents are away. After releasing a Mr. Cleverman to let it cook, Ryan began to think about which world is more suitable for training Hermione. Because Hermione made a soul contract after the last crossing, Ryan can also take Hermione through the soul contract. The problem is that Hermione needs 10 times as much offset as Ryan himself, so a world like Song of Ice and Fire already under his control cannot go. After thinking for a while, Ryan decided to choose a first or second level world as well. After all, Hermione now lacks combat experience. That is what she actually learned in practice. Hermione lacks the consciousness of killing enemies after going to the battlefield. Of course, for most people who were born and raised in the peaceful era, they are like this. This is a peaceful gift and cannot be said badly. However, for the use of the knowledge learned in peacetime on the battlefield, such peaceful thinking is very unfavorable for survival on the battlefield. The practice of a low-level world is enough to make her reborn in this respect, while also ensuring her safety. Just do it. Ryan, after having a rich breakfast, took Mr. Kiyozu to the Wanji grocery store and began to choose the world. Rose Crystal is not here, leaving a note saying she went to play with other dolls. Lean picked up the note and smiled. Then he was busy with his own business. He was very happy that Rose Crystal found her own life. After sitting in a chair and thinking for a while, Lane decided to choose the first level world as the destination this time. After all, what Hermione needs most now is the determination to kill. The lowest level of the world is enough. The first world Ryan gave up at a glance, and the Tom Hanks, who sat in a chair with a small flat head, was a sign that could not be more obvious. Forrest Gump is indeed very famous, but that world is indeed not suitable for combat. The same is true in the second world. Amir Khan's face makes it easy for Ryan to recognize that this is the world of 3 silly troubles in Bollywood. Naturally, this world is not suitable for fighting, even for foreigners. The third world. As soon as Ryan crossed the space door, he found himself on a messy train, with English speaking in the car beside him. Slovakia, where there are the best natural hot springs in the world. Wait, aren't you fighting there? Slovakia hasn't been in war for 50 years. Ryan hides outside the door and thinks this conversation looks a bit familiar. After slowly increasing, his memories of the past are becoming clearer now, so he feels like he has heard these words. After looking through the door slit, Lane discovered that there were 4 young women in it. 3 look pretty and 1 looks a little sorry to the audience. Okay, Ryan knows where this is. In the world of a horror movie he watched with his roommates at the university, he soon decided to train Hermione here, because there are many people in this world. There are enough targets for Hermione to correctly understand life and death on the battlefield during the battle. But the problem now is where the space gate Ryan will come out at the same place next time. In order to avoid being thrown on the railway, Ryan can only follow the movie protagonists to their destination on this messy train. After stunned several drug-selling guys with a coma spell, physical, Ryan threw them out of the car window to make a box for rest. Because there is no magic in this world, Ryan was very relieved to leave magic marks on the 3 heroines, and after doing a few magic defensive formations in the box, he sat on the bed and began to study the previous knowledge. Just after studying a small application about shadows, it was dawn. The train stopped in a small town in Slovakia. Ryan added a phantom body spell to himself and followed behind the 3 heroines. He nodded and chose not to return until he watched them walk into a hot spring hotel. This scene also represents that the plot is about to officially start. Not long after returning, the doorbell at home rang. After opening the door, Hermione was standing outside. Sorry, I came a little late, because today I want to cook my own meal. I called you last night. You asked me to come here this morning. Have you found a world that suits me to really adapt to the battle? Yes. Ryan gave Hermione to the living room. I have found a world that will allow you to adapt to the upcoming brutal war. That world is similar to ours today, except that there is no magic. So, I ask you again, are you ready? I'm ready, Hermione said as soon as Ryan's words fell. I thought about these things since I ventured with you in that temple. When I last faced the vampire in that underground prison, determined completely. As long as we are doing the right thing, what's wrong with your hands stained with blood? Besides, your hands are full of blood. How can I make my hands as white as in the past? Thank you. Lane hugged Hermione, and then gently kissed her face. Hermione looked surprised because Ryan's racial culture, unlike most British people, rarely used this body language to express his inner emotions. Fortunately, Hermione is also more concerned about the soul's cooperation between the 2 people in this regard, so there is no opinion on this unique way of getting along. After being suddenly attacked, Hermione quickly responded to Ryan, because she sensed Ryan's sincere feelings at this time. After a few minutes, the 2 talents were flushed apart, and then they looked shyly elsewhere. Okay, Let's go now. You close your eyes first. Finally Ryan broke this awkward silence. Hermione closed her eyes and held out her hand. Lane pulled her through 2 space doors and walked into the pre-selected world. Okay, here we are. You can open your eyes now. Hermione opened her eyes when he heard what Ryan said. Asked after looking around curiously. It should be here on Earth. www.mplnovel.com. I can even see that this is Europe. But which country is this? Slovakia. Ryan said simply. I smelled amazing blood from the owner of this store, and eradicating these evil people is your goal for this exercise. Ryan briefly introduced the store. What is it for? The killing game is terrible. You are right. Sometimes we want to save people and want to reduce the harm of innocent people. Then we must not be afraid of blood on our hands. Hermione took a deep breath after listening to Ryan's introduction. A few times later, he said, oh, is there anyone like this in our world? Yes. What? I always thought that this kind of evil people is just an exaggeration of art. How can they exist in reality? Hermione was amazed. She knew that these worlds of Ryan were generally formed by certain literary works. It will be more exaggerated than the normal world. But she did not expect that there would be such people in the world who broke through the lower limit of humanity. That's because the world we are in now is also a world of literary and artistic works, Lane said silently inwardly. Of course. These words will always rot in his heart, will not say. In Hermione's surprised eyes, Ryan, who madly vomited, nodded and said, this is what the Death Eater and that person are. They will kill any mole for no reason, and even play a killing game and stop them. The only way to save more lives is to end their lives. It's terrible. This kind of evil heart is really terrible. Compared with this Dementor, it can even be considered cute. Hermione finally concluded. Chapter 352, Killing Lives for Protecting Students. Now the question is, where are these garbage people? Hermione looked at the hot spring hotel not far away and said, at least it should not be here, because there are too many people here to keep it secret. Yes. Hermione turned around and asked after looking at it for a while, you said this hotel is the eyeliner of the killing club, so its front desk should be connected to this club. It should be like this. Ryan nodded. It seems that Hermione's observation and analysis ability is indeed very outstanding, and can grasp the key points of the present in such a short time. After confirming this matter, Hermione quickly moved into action. With the help of Phantom Mantra, Hermione approached the front desk with glasses and stunned him with a coma. Then he dragged him into the small room behind the counter. The small house looks like a clutter room with all kinds of messes in it. After using a pillow to transform into the front desk and let him lie on the counter, the two cleared an empty space in the utility room and threw the person to the ground. Let me think. Yes, I should use this. After a few words, Hermione thought of a way. She pulled out a sword and cut a cut in the hand at the front desk, then squeezed blood onto the back of her hand. At the same time chanted the spell of Yaxia. When the sound of the spell sounded, the surrounding light dimmed, and even a trace of smell of sweetness and rust began to appear in the air. Blood magic, the most weird magic in the world of Song of Ice and Fire. In the world of the Song of Ice and Fire with a very low magic level, the use of rough methods to urge such magic may be relatively small, but after being improved, it is higher in the real magic world of Harry Potter world. After the level magic power is driven, the movement will not be small. That's why they refuse to use these magics in front of others in the world of Harry Potter, because it doesn't look right. Okay, I know. Hermione stood up, with no special expression on her face, but Ryan saw from the corner of her slightly trembling mouth that her inner activity was now very intense. Countercurrent. Hermione made a gesture to the people on the ground, and at the same time pronounced the spell in Axia. The people on the ground instantly flushed and curled up like shrimp. But soon everything calmed down again, and the front desk was completely still. It seems that Hermione has been practicing blood magic recently, and even this very complicated magic can be used. The role of this magic is to use blood magic to drive the blood in the target body to quickly reverse flow, and at the same time raise the blood pressure to a very high level to make the target internal organs and the brain fatally bleed. The only regret is that if the target is a magical creature with magic power in their body, then the magic in their body will naturally block the effect of this magic. For magic to take effect, unless you can cling to the other party and input a lot of mana to overwhelm the other party's mana. But this requires too much mana, which is far less affordable than other magic. In a few years, this person has deceived at least 300 people on the road of death as an accomplice, so I chose to punish him with my method. Hermione looked at Ryan and said, you don't need to explain. Lane stared at Hermione's eyes. You only need to do what you think is right. This world is for you to truly understand your heart. As long as you always remember that everything that happened in this world is true, every decision you make is related. A lot of life is enough. I will help you deal with some logistical support issues here. In addition to that, I will only guarantee your safety. All other things require you to make your own decisions. I see. Hermione nodded seriously. Now we should go to those people less killing clubs. If we go early, we can save some more people. The club's location is in an abandoned factory near the town. Of course. We should move faster because that group of people when contacting this front desk this time. We must rescue those innocent people before they respond. Okay, now I'll listen to you. Ryan nodded and followed Hermione out of the hotel. There is still some distance to the abandoned factory. Is there any good way for you to pass quickly? Hermione asked after walking out of the hotel. I bought a household flying broom before and it was okay to sit with 2 people, Ryan said and took the broom out of his space bag. Fly over? Let's be in a hurry. I remember your flying level is not good, Hermione said after seeing Ryan's broom. Okay, hurry up, Ryan said after riding on the broom. I'm the home version. It's much better than the competition broom or the school's half-scrapped ones. And your flying level is not much better than mine. Go, don't betray me. Okay, you're right. We can't drive the car in the hotel without a driver's license anyway. Riding a broom is indeed the fastest way. Then Hermione also climbed onto the broom and then grabbed the back row the brass handle of the seat. Okay, let's go. The straight line between the 2 points is the shortest, although this household broom does not fly fast. But because you can go straight to the target without flying in the air, you don't have to take the mountain road. Instead, you have finished driving for more than 20 minutes in just 10 minutes. It should be a factory before the destination. Looking at the smoke and weeds on the chimney, you know that it has been abandoned for a short time. However, from the large number of dog patrols and vehicles parked near the building, it is known that this should not be an ordinary building. Obviously the slaughterhouse of the murder club is here. Okay, let's lurch in first. After looking at it in detail, we will arrange the next action. Hermione jumped off the broom and said www.mplnovel.com. There was only some vague memory in that person's memory. He did not know the specific situation. After applying a magic spell to themselves, the 2 men touched towards the factory. With the help of the shadow, their body temperature became exactly the same as their surroundings, and they easily deceived the infrared alarm set up near the plant. This place is indeed called a strict guard, but it is clear that magic has not been thought of. With the help of magic, Ryan and Hermione easily dived into this factory to understand the internal structure of the factory. The prison where the innocents are held and the killing ground are in the basement of the factory, and only 2 elevators can go through. On the ground are rooms for guarding and monitoring. Is there any way you can temporarily block this place? Hermione asked. Otherwise, it will be easy for many people to run away once you start. No problem. Look at me. Ryan said it took more than 10 minutes to drop 5 dragon crystal slabs around the factory. After laying the stone slabs, Ryan pulled out a yellow paper note and threw it away. The paper rune spontaneously ignited. After the rune ran out, Hermione suddenly felt that she was in a different place than before, but after looking around, she didn't see any difference. Looked at Hermione's puzzled eyes, Ryan explained. This is called ghost hitting a wall, and it belongs to an oriental technique. For wizards, they can go out from here by just using a pointing spell. But for those who do not master magic, they may never get out. So, I started. Hermione rushed out with a slight nod to Ryan. Chapter 353, Killing Lives for Protecting Lives. When Hermione started to move, Ryan followed closely. In his observations, Hermione first chose to go to the basement to rescue the hostages. This is not the optimal option, and it is easy to put yourself in danger. But this approach is very consistent with Hermione's habit of helping others first. After entering the basement, Hermione saw what happened in the prison through the iron fence. Before, she just listened to Ryan's general introduction about this place and made some psychological preparations. But now after seeing with her own eyes, she realized that the content that Ryan had told before was far less than 1/10 of the reality. After seeing a so-called customer as Dr. Hannibal, the extreme evil that was revealed in the elegance made Hermione feel that there was a string in his mind that broke. Lane found that a magic reaction on Hermione's body suddenly added a section upwards, and then the red blood and black smoke condensed by her naked eyes enveloped her inside, only to see her figure vaguely. There is no problem with the soul. Ryan used her magic eyes to see that Hermione's soul had no major problems, so she withdrew to take steps to support her, still just following her. Such large movements have been seen in both the monitoring and the basement, but those people have no way to deal with the situation in front of them. They shot wildly in the face of this strange thing, but all the bullets directly disappeared in the mist, and as Hermione stepped forward, the murderers in the 2 rooms fell silently. If you can walk in and check it, you will find that they all lost their lives because of brainstem hemorrhage in an instant. But Ryan was relieved that the security guards who shot hadn't killed them, but used shadow magic to get their shadows to disarm them and tie them aside. This means that Hermione is now normal and has not completely lost her mind. The upper monitoring room saw everything happening in the basement. They closed the elevator and tried to trap this strange thing underground. Unfortunately, this was completely ineffective. After cleaning the basement, Hermione and Lane easily walked down the elevator shaft to the ground. After, the process in the basement is repeated. Due to the ghosts surrounding the wall, all people can only wait to be or dried up like lambs to be slaughtered. Half an hour passed, and after the last security guard hidden in the roof mezzanine was by his own shadow, the battle that could not be said to be a battle was over. In this battle, Ryan learned from practice that if relying solely on light weapons, Muzz could not cause any harm to the wizard. For example, those people hit at least 100 bullets from 2 people, and even a few grenades exploded near them. But neither the grenade shrapnel nor the bullets even broke their armor. It can even be said that this gunpowder-driven kinetic weapon attack can be immune to magic defense. According to the previous experience in the use of scientific and technological weapons, Lane believes that only certain high-energy weapons can cause sufficient damage to the wizard, such as nuclear weapons or large-scale laser weapons that explode at close range. Use their energy to consume the magic energy used by the wizard for defense before it can harm the wizard. In short, magic has a great advantage in the defense of mole weapons that use kinetic energy to cause damage. Some people think that using a gun to deal with a wizard is really too simple to think about wizards and magic. Ryan and Hermione began to use blood magic to check whether these security guards had human lives on their hands. The problem now is that most of them have no human security. They are indeed guilty, but they don't need life to repay their sins. I think we should keep them alive, Hermione told Ryan after dealing with the last security guard who had killed. At this time her emotions had calmed down, and the red and black mist trapped around her body had also dispersed. It just looks a little white, and his spirit is not very good. You really are a kind person. Lane sighed softly. Wouldn't you just look at me and make me happy now that I'm in a bad mood? There are 50 or 60 people who were killed by me today. Then you say I'm kind. Hermione looked at Ryan with a puzzled look. Of course it's kind, Ryan said to Hermione after passing a small bottle of Kington Island's golden wine. This kind of wine actually tasted like champagne, and the alcohol level was not high. It's suitable for people like Hermione who didn't drink much before. After watching Hermione take the wine bottle and slammed her cheeks red, Ryan went on. You have enough strength but not cruel, not easy to kill, and cherish life. This is true kindness. So I used to tell you that Professor Moody is a kind elder is here. Although he does things more rudely, but he chose not to kill if he could kill the enemy, which is true kindness. And how many people did you save by doing this? How many people would they kill if these bad guys were let go? Chapter 354, Guests Come. Ah, I'm finally back. After returning to the living room of Lane's house, Hermione sighed with satisfaction, as if she had put down a heavy psychological package. It feels like I'm going to be soaked with blood in these 2 months. Even if I cleaned it many times before, now I can feel the gas coming out of my body. Let me go home and take a shower first, and then come back later. Hermione said goodbye to Ryan and left. After watching Hermione leave, Ryan glanced at the 15 offset points he harvested and pouted. Sure enough, it is a low-level world. Even if you turn the table completely, you can only get this offset point. Fortunately, they have some additional gains. The world is 10 years ahead of the world they are in now, so they find a way to collect a lot of useful things. For example, the general world economic development trend and some of the technologies they used have gained an opportunity after them. For example, Hermione collected some news and knowledge about dentistry and dental medical devices that are not yet in use. Of course, these are just marginal gains. The most important gain is that Hermione has truly transformed from a general to a fighter in 2 months of uninterrupted fighting, and is well prepared to face the upcoming full-scale war. Of course, Hermione's long-range magic attack from the beginning to later cut her throat with her teeth and cut her throat. An old lady who had bruised a dozen girls and took a blood bath. This process of slowly adapting to the battle still made Ryan feel a little chilly and honest. It's terrible to be angry. Finally, I completed an important thing before. Lane thought about stretching his waist. I hope to spend the week quietly. Parents' life away from home is very precious from every angle. It's a pity that contrary to his wishes, he just heard a knocking sound from the window when he was about to get something to eat in the world of Song of Ice and Fire. Galen. Ryan walked to the window and saw a tan owl knocking on the glass window with his mouth. He recognized that this was one of the 3 owls bought a while ago for the convenience of the Weasley twins. Because of doing business, choose the names that are more pleasing to the name of the 3 owls. Among the other 2 owls, the white one is called Psyche, and the pure brown one is called Nat. In short, they are all names that sound very profitable. After taking off the letter on the owl's feet, Ryan discovered that the letter was written by the twins, saying that they and their mother would visit Ryan directly tomorrow morning. The special label at the back is mainly to discuss about the twins and Ryan doing business in partnership, because Ryan is the majority shareholder in this business. It seems that the twins feel that they can't hide their business, so they can only choose to show off to their mothers. Fortunately, the situation is not bad. At least the letter didn't say anything about letting Ryan divest, indicating that Mrs. Weasley is not very determined, even if she objected. Ryan immediately wrote a reply saying that they were very welcome, and then asked Garen to send the letter back to the twins. A few minutes after the letter was sent away, Hermione packed her bags at home and came to Lane's house. Even if Ryan and Hermione are no less powerful than normalers, even if they have experienced Voldemort's resurrection, this big event that affects the magic world. However, as students, they still have to write summer homework. Fortunately, 2 people are now proficient in using shadow magic, and can directly use these shadows to pick up pens to write things. This is much more efficient than handwriting. Aren't we cheating? Hermione asked when she looked at a shadow like a tentacle wrapped in several quill pens rustling on parchment paper. As a good student, she didn't like this kind of speculative thing. Big cold. Of course not. The homework is just to check how much we have learned. Every letter on the parchment is obtained after our thinking. We just improve efficiency to make more time for more important things. Lane, staring at the writing quill pen, replied, they can use magic so blatantly because two people do not need a wand to operate these shadows. After two people throw the wand into the grocery store in the world, the magic detection on the natural wand will not find it. Not to mention that Ryan drew a lot of runes on the walls of the house to ensure absolute safety, basically able to completely isolate the magical fluctuations in the room. It seems that these assignments can be finished in a week. Before going to bed at night, Hermione said to Ryan when she was going home. Before, Ryan invited him to come and learn to eat here by the way. At first Hermione worried that it would cause inconvenience to Ryan and she intended to decline the invitation. Lane then showed him how he took various ingredients from the space store and a robot that can do housework, and watched this robot prepare a great afternoon tea for them. Hermione agreed that Ryan would do his homework at his house these days, because it would save a lot of cooking time. The next morning, Ryan got up early to clean up. After letting the robot finish breakfast, it happened to have breakfast with Hermione, who came on time. When the two of them finished their rich breakfast writing homework in the living room, they heard the doorbell ringing. After they quickly dispelled the shadows of their homework, Lane went to open the door. Good morning, Mrs. Weasley, welcome you. After opening the door, Ryan greeted Mrs. Weasley warmly outside. As he greeted him, he saw twins squinting at himself behind Mrs. Weasley. Good morning, Ryan. This visit is indeed a bit pretentious, Mrs. Weasley said under the guidance of Ryan to the living room. www.mplenovel.com. At this time Fred quietly approached and said, Ryan, we and our mother, after talking about it for a long time, no one can convince anyone. Today, it depends on whether you can convince her. It should be possible, Ryan replied confidently. After all, Mrs. Weasley was not an authoritarian parent. If she could reason, she would still be happy to accept the path chosen by the children themselves. Oh, Hermione, glad to see you here. Mrs. Weasley was a little surprised to see Hermione writing homework after entering the living room, but she said hello. Good morning, Hermione. Good morning, Mrs. Weasley. Hermione packed the parchment feather pen and ink bottle on the table and invited the three guests to sit down. Then she took the kettle from the side and poured a few cups of tea for everyone. Hermione, why are you here? George asked the family of three who wanted to ask. Because my parents and Ryan's parents are going to Taobao to do business, and it is likely that they have been staying in Taobao for several years now. There are only two of us here. In this case, it is normal for us to choose to stay together during the day. Yes, at least it's more convenient to cook than to have separate parties, Hermione said when she brought a plate of snacks from the kitchen on the table. That's right, Mrs. Weasley nodded. You know, the mysterious man is back. In this case, it is also a good thing for your parents to go abroad, which is much safer than staying in the UK. After a few words of greeting, Mrs. Weasley finally talked about the main purpose of coming today. Chapter 355, Convince. After eating two snacks, Mrs. Weasley finally talked about the main purpose of coming today. Ryan, I know that with your help, both of them have greatly improved their academic performance. But I hope that their grades will be higher, so that they can enter the Ministry of Magic in the future. Not only me, but Arthur also thinks so. Yes, if you open a store, it's too distracting for both of them. Well, Mrs. Weasley. Lane thought about it after listening to Mrs. Weasley's words, then nodded and said to her very seriously, I can understand your expectations of both of them. As parents, I hope the children will have a better life in the future. But Imho, you'd better ask your two sons what they think. Not everyone is suitable for magic department. But Arthur and Percy. Mrs. Weasley was interrupted by the twins before she finished. Mom, we're different from Dad and Percy. Working in the Ministry of Magic from morning to night will really suffocate us, and may cause a lot of misfortune. The salary we earn every month is not find many. It is indeed so, Mrs. Weasley, Lane said, looking at Mrs. Weasley. The two of them are older than me, and they are both about to become adults. So they should have their own mature ideas. In this case, forcing them to do things they don't like, and doing a career they don't like is not a good thing. After saying this, Ryan saw the twins nodding hard, with a strong expression on his face. Miss Weasley may not be very determined about the twins in this regard, so she let go of this and started to say that she was worried about another. But they are just making children's gadgets. It is okay to go to school now. How can they feed themselves after graduation? It seems that parents around the world are similar, especially when facing children in some emerging industries or special industries. They always feel that a stable job is better for their children's future. You don't need to worry about this, Mrs. Weasley, Lane carefully analyzed. Fred and George invented new magic toys and even magic props are very talented. Even they have mastered the alchemy of entry in a short time. In this case, The prospect of opening a magic prop shop is very bright. After listening to this sentence, Mrs. Weasley's complexion began to relax. Ryan quickly hit the iron while it was hot. For example, there is a shop called Zoko Shochu in Hogsmeade. Because the owner, Zoko, is old, the contents have not been updated in the past 10 years. Even so, the store's daily income of Jin Jialong may be equivalent to a month's salary for an ordinary Ministry of Magic staff. I want to add some of my works with Fred and George's newly developed things, which exceeds Joko's laugh. The store is not a very difficult thing. Let's say it again. Ryan spread his hands. As a Mulborn wizard, I am willing to invest most of my wealth in the magic world into them. You, as their mother, please give them more trust. Have you really thought about it? Have you really decided to open a magic shop as your future life goal? After listening to Ryan's advice, Mrs. Weasley looked at the twins seriously and asked, in this regard, it is difficult for your family to help you. So are you ready to face the difficulties and challenges alone? Yes, Mother. We have already thought about it. The twins glanced at this time, and then said in unison. When they said this, the two men showed unprecedented seriousness and determination. Very good. Remember your choice today. As a mother, I wish you all the best. When my shop opens this weekend, my father, Percy, and I will both go to participate. After drinking a cup of tea, Mrs. Weasley and Shuang Baotai left. Before the phantom appeared, Lane could see the Weasley twins with a happy smile. It's time for the weekend, which is the day before going to Sirius Ancestral House. After packing up his bags early in the morning, Ryan and Hermione went to Diagon Alley to attend the opening ceremony of the Weasley Joke Store. If it weren't for some of the loathsome ideas of wizards, your name should also appear on the door. Hermione, who was watching the fireworks store, said aside. Do business, as long as you earn money. Fame is not so important, Lane replied. Okay, let's go in and see. Although I am a major shareholder and helped a lot in opening, I have never seen all the products in the store. The store seems to have been renovated once, which is much brighter than it used to be as a warehouse, and it can even be said that it is too bright. The wall on the first floor has been replaced by a large window. The window on the left is full of bright colors and displays a variety of rotating, twitching, blinking, jumping, and screaming goods, while the window on the right is filled with more serious commodity. Ryan saw that the brass bracelet he had made was placed at the top of a pile of goods in the window on the right. Lane, Hermione welcomes you. Because the store just opened, a large crowd poured in. So Ryan squeezed into the innermost part of the shop before they saw the busy twins and the Weasleys. The two of them were called by the clerk before they even talked. Ryan, they can only check various products in the store. On the first floor are mainly joke products, such as various spoofed snacks and sweets, and wands and feather pens that can be used for tricks. There are even one-off rune stones made by the twins after learning the basics of alchemy. Each rune stone can make people perfect daydreams for half an hour. Really? Ghost. Ryan glanced at it to know what it was. Previously, Ryan and the twins restored a certain old illusion defense array found in the library. Ryan himself used this knowledge to make a complete set of rapidly deployed phantom array as a fixed site defense. Unexpectedly, the twins simplified the above knowledge and used it for this. It can only be said that the two of them are really talented in mischief. The second floor is where the magic props, mainly black magic defense supplies, are sold. Unlike downstairs, there are mainly some adults here, and it is not as noisy as downstairs. Hey, Ryan, Hermione. George watched them greet them after they went upstairs. Thanks to you, the market for these magic items is very good now. George called the clerk to walk over to him and said to Ryan, although the guys in the Ministry of Magic have been bragging about how safe it is now, at least the jailbreak of the 10 Death Eaters has caused many people to start looking for something to protect them, and we can provide these things. Then do you carry out real name registration for some of the more important commodities? Ryan asked him about his concern. That's a must. www.mtlnovel.com. We don't want our goods to be used by the Death Eaters to deal with our loved ones and friends. Even if we do so, we will lose some of our business. Speaking of which, George took it from the shelf a few things similar to coal. For example, this kind of stealth smoke bombs that must be dispelled with matching spells, and your defensive bracelets, which are very useful in actual combat. We all require guests to buy real names. Of course, like decoy bombs that divert people's attention, or it's not necessary to do something that only protects against some evil spells. By the way, there is a gift for you to give to you, Ryan said, drawing a wooden box from under the wizard's robe and handing it over. After George took it, he opened the box and found a pair of headbands made of patterned steel. He looked at Ryan somewhat puzzled. I made it with magic metal. On the one hand, as a defensive item, this headband can resist a total of 10 coma spells in a week. On the other hand, this headband can let people enter the mechanized mind every 3 days for half an hour. In this case, the user can be guaranteed to make all kinds of judgments without any emotional influence. It is very useful in battle and can even save a life. This is too expensive for me to accept. As far as I know, some so-called pureblood family heirlooms with short history may not have this level. George was a little surprised after listening to Ryan's introduction. It's okay, after all, I am the main investor in this store. In this case, I think that only when you guarantee safety can you safeguard my interests. Finally, Ryan persuaded the twins to accept the gift on the grounds of protecting his own interests before leaving the store. Chapter 356, Enlighten. After coming out of the Weasley joke shop, Lane and Hermione met Percy, who hurriedly came. After seeing Ryan, Percy said to Ryan, "Ryan, can I ask you to talk about something alone?" "Yes." Ryan glanced at him and nodded, asking Hermione to wait for him at the Florin cold drink shop, and then went to a less noticeable place beside the joke shop with Percy. "Okay, you need my help for anything you want?" Ryan asked, looking at Percy, watching his anxious look. Ryan suddenly guessed what Percy was doing to find him. Sure enough, after seeing no one overhearing around, Percy spoke of the trouble he had recently. "For the past 2 days, Fudge and his cronies have been preaching everything in the Ministry of Magic, but my father told me that darkness is coming, and even that person may be back. I don't know who to listen to now." "It's very simple." After listening to Percy's narration, Ryan felt that he was much better than the state of his original ambition that the 6 relatives did not recognize at the same time in the original book, so he didn't mind pushing things in the direction. "What do you think in your heart?" "Well, I think the things my father said are a bit exaggerated, and the situation may not be so bad. But Fudge's kind of saying that everything is safe is purely bullshit. I recently found out that the Black Wizard was more active than in the past when I was on the field. Let alone worry about the 10 notorious Death Eaters suddenly jumping out and attacking me." Percy said his choice after a few seconds of silence. "So your heart is clear that the situation is deteriorating, but because of the fear that they will not be able to stay in line with Foggy and affect your work in the Ministry of Magic, you do not intend to admit this fact." Seeing Percy intending to open his mouth to argue, Ryan waved and interrupted him. "I can only say that you are not smart to do this. It's not a good thing to fall down with your family for a job, especially when you insist on a lie." "Sorry, I really am." Percy squatted down with his hands covering his head, and it seems that this has been torturing him for a long time. Fortunately, the people around were attracted by the items in the joke shop, and no one noticed them. "Here." Ryan handed over a bottle of fine ale, and then said, "I understand you. This week I read the Prophet Daily and found that the Ministry of Magic expelled several hemp seeds and hybrids that insisted on the poor situation." "Sorcerer, if your father was not the patriarch of one of the 28 sacred families, and if his position was marginal, he might also be fired, but Fred and George said that he is now somewhat rejected by the Ministry of Magic. In this case, you want to keep it as understandable that you have a tangled position, because I know you've always wanted to stand out in the Ministry of Magic." "Yeah, so I'm contradictory now. I really can't quarrel directly with Fudge like my father, but I really can't accept what Fudge is doing recently. The Irishman on my team last week I was attacked, and I am still in Streetmonger. That's because Fudge insisted on everything, so let us go to some more dangerous places and perform tasks as usual, with insufficient manpower and equipment." I submitted a report to hope that to improve the current problem, the old woman named Umbridge was called to the office and approved for more than an hour. Percy spoke out under the influence of alcohol. "In this way, I will analyze it for you." Ryan, who looked at Percy's expectation, analyzed. "What you are worried about now is that if you insist that the situation in the wizarding world is deteriorating, then you may be sidelined or directly fired, right?" "That's it," Percy said by taking a sip of ale. "I would like to ask what Mrs. Burns, the director of the Enforcement Department of Magic Law on your head, said about the current situation." "Of course she was against it. Most of the people who have been injured recently are from the Enforcement Department of Magic Law, because we sometimes have to face the dark forces, but not as well as Azor Strikers. Training, but she has no good way to deal with this phenomenon. I have seen her go to the Minister of Magic's office several times and quarreled a lot. Unfortunately, not only did the problem not be solved, but Fudge also reduced our company's funding." Percy said helplessly. "Since this is the case, I suggest that you be consistent with your boss in this respect." Ryan said, "As long as you don't publicly take the initiative to express your views, even if Fudge is the Minister of Magic, you can't fire you." As for marginalization, Lane paused. "There will definitely be marginalization, but Fudge's lies won't last long. After the 10 Death Eaters are free, I think there is a great chance that they will get around. In this case, Fudge's time in the Ministry of Magic, it won't be too long." "So, what if they don't destroy?" Percy asked an important question. "If they don't destroy, the situation will be more serious. Think about you can make 10 crazy and brutal Death Eaters give up destruction and lie quietly." Lane pointed out the key point. "If this is the case, Fudge will most likely become the least popular Minister of Magic in nearly 100 years. You can imagine what his followers will end." Ryan shrugged after saying this. "Well, I know." Percy took another sip of wine. "Do you have any suggestions for me?" "You can be silent on this issue these days, but it's better to be honest with your subordinates. Because you are on the front line, they can stay in a safe office like Fudge. Once you believe Fudge's lies, you are probably the first victims. www.mtlnovel.com. So my personal suggestion during this time is that you try to deal with your colleagues and subordinates as much as possible, and provide some help within your ability. This together can help you to be stable to spend this difficult time, and at the same time can save you a valuable network. Understand that in this crisis-filled environment, it is generally easier for people to build friendship and trust. Lane pointed out according to Percy's character with some methods. I hope he cannot go the wrong way as the original. I know, you told me a great way. Thank you. Percy looked up and took the last sip of the bottle. Now I will call my 3 subordinates to visit the injured Irishian streetmonger, and then I will find a way to train them recently so that they do not live in streetmonger like the Irish. After speaking, Percy said goodbye to Ryan and was about to leave, but Ryan stopped him. By the way, you hold this card. With this card you can buy the same items related to black magic defense every month at 50% off, and all other goods are 20% off. After finishing, Ryan handed over a gold card, which is the highest level VIP card in the Weasley joke shop. Only 10 cards can be sent each year, and Lane has the right to send 5 of them. Thank you. Percy began to feel a little embarrassed, but thought that his subordinate lying on the bed because of an official injury still reached out and took the card. Then he shook hands with Ryan before leaving. 5 points shifted to change Percy's attitude. The system made a sound at the right time, and Ryan smiled. He feels very happy to be able to help the Weasleys. After all, they are all very good people and should have a happy life. Chapter 357, 12 Grimmauld Place. After finishing the guidance, Ryan and Hermione went home with raspberry jam ice cream. The next morning, 2 people threw their luggage into a space bag and left home to go to Sirius' ancestral home. Grimmauld Place is in a decaying neighborhood in London. Not many people have come here. For safety's sake, Ryan and Hermione got off the bus 1 stop away from Grimmauld Square. In the past, 2 people used the faceless person's ability to make up to ordinary middle school students in Eastern Europe. Thanks to the rich variety of cosmetics in the modern world, they have unprecedented convenience in cosmetic surgery, such as various liquid foundations, colored contact lenses, etc., plus some strange magic potions similar to hair dye potions. With the help of these things, no one can recognize that this boy with brown hair, green eyes and a Caucasian face is Ryan. Your dress is a bit of a personality. Hermione with blonde hair walked along the sidewalk and said, where did you learn that quick hair dye? In a previous book, Ryan said, it was originally a failed potion, because it can only last for half an hour. But I think it can be used to disguise quickly, and after trying it, I found that it is better than faceless. The medicines used by the people are more convenient. Well, it should be here when they arrive. This place looks pretty shabby, Hermione said after looking around. Her assessment is accurate. The houses around the square are all tattered, some of the windows are broken, and the light is shining under the sun. Many doors are peeling paint, and there are several front door steps full of garbage. A pungent smell of rotting garbage emanated from the swollen garbage pockets in the rundown gate. The two began to recall the content of Dumbledore's note. Just thinking of 12 Grimmauld Place. There was a tattered door popping out of nowhere, followed by the dirty walls and the spooky ones. The windows also appeared, and it looked as if an extra house had suddenly swelled, squeezing everything on both sides. The last old-looking house appeared there, who, when they walked up the broken stone steps, grabbed the silver door knocker in the shape of a large snake, and knocked on the old door with black paint on the door that had peeled off and covered with scratches on the left and right. There was a vigilant voice inside. Ryan heard Sirius' voice. Ryan Liang and Hermione Granger. Ryan said at the door. Ryan, tell me where you first met me? Sirius asked cautiously, as if the headquarters of the Phoenix had entered a state of war. In Hogwarts Common Room. Lane replied. I just knocked you out when I was fighting. Correct. But you really don't have to say that in such detail. Sirius opened the door and appeared in front of 2 strange faces wearing ordinary middle school uniforms. Relax, it's really us, Ryan said, taking off the blue contact lens in his eyes. Come in. Sirius gave way to a neutral gear. It's good to be cautious. No wonder Moody praises you as an error. By the way, you two follow me. Don't touch anything. Sirius led the way. As soon as he entered the dark hall, Ryan smelled a moist, grey smell, and a sweet rot. As Sirius walks into the house, the smell is heavier, giving the impression that this place is like an abandoned empty house. The entire entrance hall is very long and is a standard Victorian residential style. The past glory of this house can be seen faintly from the peeling wallpaper and the polished carpet. A cobweb-shaped chandelier overhead shimmered, and some portraits blackened by the ages hung diagonally on the wall. Ryan heard a small animal running hurriedly behind the skirting board. The chandelier and the candelabra on a wobbly table next to it were made into the shape of a snake. If you come early, the Weasleys may arrive in the afternoon. Sirius introduced when he walked into the room with 2 people. Because our family is Slytherin except me, this house is so full of pureblood style things. I don't like it very much. If Dumbledore needed a safe place, I would never return. Here it is. Right. Is there anything we need to do? Ryan asked looking at the rundown house. It looks very bad here, and I can't even find a clean floor. You just arrived. I think you may need to take a rest first. Sirius said a little embarrassedly. After all, this is his house, and it was a shame to expose it to the guests in such a mess. It's okay, We are all well rested and ready to work," Hermione said in a vibrant tone. "Okay, tell us what we need to do." "Well, this serious. Let the children clean the kitchen and guest room first. Slowly everyone will live in. You have to make them able to cook and sleep." At this time, a hair began to be grey. Middle-aged man walked downstairs. Professor Lupin. Ryan and Hermione immediately recognized who this person was and greeted him. "I'm sorry to let you work as soon as you come, but this is no way," Lupin said mildly. "No one has lived here for 10 years. Since Sirius's mother died, there has been no one left. There is only one mad and elder house elf in this house." www.mplnovel.com. We now have at least packed the house to the level where it can live. "Of course, I will take you to pack the house. You don't have to worry about hurting you when facing unknown things." "Okay, but you just said that there are house elves," Ryan asked, because the house elves he had seen before would clean up the places they served, and their magic was enough to make them even old. "Big can still do most of the housework." "Don't mention it." Sirius looked disgusted. "Chris will surprise you if he wants to do what he can. But he has been mad by my mother's and mother's portraits, and now he will not touch it except for merely cursing me and doing some weird things." "Any household chores?" "All the housework in the past 2 days was mainly done by Lupin." Lane felt that fortunately, Lupin lived in. As a real single dog, Lupin had strong self-care ability and top-level housework abilities, which allowed Sirius to survive normally these days. "Okay, our first step is to clean up the kitchen. The first 2 days I packed up a small piece of empty space for cooking, but that was not enough. Today everyone will come here one after another. We must clean up the whole as soon as possible. The kitchen can only meet the guests who will come." Lupin went downstairs and began to arrange tasks directly. As a top student and senior in school, his organizational ability is much stronger than that of the famous troublemaker Sirius. "No problem." Ryan and Hermione first took the luggage out of the space bag and put it in the living room, then followed Lupin to the kitchen. Chapter 358, Tidy Up. The exterior of this house looks a bit shabby, but the magical defense system inside is still functioning normally. So you can use the magic while cleaning up. The traces of the Ministry of Magic cannot monitor the situation in the house, Lupin told Ryan and Hermione as she walked inside. "That's good. I think my magic may play a role in cleaning," Ryan said with some joy. "It would be great if you were willing to do it. Alchemy should play a big role in cleaning up this ancient house. After all, there are too many different kinds in this ancient building that has existed for at least 700 years. Magic and runes. We really need a more professional person to deal with these problems," Lupin said after using magic to clean up the 2 spider webs in front of him. "Okay, here we are." After walking down a flight of stairs, they came to a basement that was not too small. From the stove next to it, it could be seen that it used to be a kitchen, but everything in the room covered with a thick layer of dust. A pile of tattered crucibles in the corner of the wall can still see table tennis-sized spiders crawling around on a large pile of spider webs. "How did you and Sirius cook these 2 days?" Hermione turned to Lupin when she saw the dust on the stove. We cleared a piece on the kitchen floor, and then put the crucible directly on the open space. "So we have eaten the convenient curry bought with bread for the past 2 days." Pointed to a small open space on the left-hand side of the kitchen door. Ryan could see that there was indeed a greasy blue slate floor that was not greasy and dusty, with black marks on it. Think of the scene where 2 big men curled up in the corner of the kitchen and stewed curry in a crucible. Ryan felt miserable. But having said that, it is also thanks to Lupin's strong hands-on ability. Otherwise, Sirius can only go out to eat every day or eat dry food alone. After a round in the kitchen, Ryan said to Lupin, "I think I have a very good magic that can solve all the pests in the kitchen. Only when not in use, there can be no one in the kitchen. After all, the magic is powerful and kills insects. The same agent may cause unnecessary harm to other people." Then I asked Sirius to call Khalees first. "He built a small nest here." Lupin ran straight upstairs after he finished, and soon he came down and told Ryan that the kitchen had been emptied successfully. "Work has started," Lane said, taking a glass bottle filled with malachite powder and an alabaster bottle filled with fluorescent garland pollen from his pocket, then took a porcelain plate from the table and wiped the 2 powders. Poured on the plate, clear water is like a spring. With the help of magic, Ryan quickly blended the 2 ingredients into a brown ingredient, and then dipped a long string of runes in sequence on the kitchen wall with a brush. "What is this written?" Lupin carefully looked at the runes written by Ryan, and found that he didn't know any of the above runes, even the origin of these runes. This surprised him because although he was a werewolf, he had learned more knowledge than most wizards since he was a student. Under such circumstances, it suddenly felt strange to find a magic rune system that I didn't know at all. Axial language. Hermione could see the origin of these runes, but she could not explain them to Lupin. "You can't tell Lupin that this is a magical inheritance from another world. This is what Ryan learned from a special place and belongs to an ancient magical civilization." Hermione could only explain Lupin so vaguely. Fortunately, among the wizards, there is a tradition of hiding their own knowledge of magic, so Lupin did not continue to ask after hearing this explanation from Hermione. "Okay." After drawing the last rune, Ryan took a step back and checked what he had just drawn. "You can start now." After speaking, Ryan retreated to the kitchen door, and then made a special gesture while saying in the Asian language, "Death Storm." Hermione's eyes widened suddenly when she heard it. With the chanting spells, the runes on the wall were activated, and a silver light filled with silence was scattered outward. The three people standing at the door of the kitchen could see the light on these runes finally forming a silver vortex of light. At the same time they could feel a wind forming in the kitchen, causing their corners to flutter. Finally, when the light completely disappeared, a neat kitchen appeared in front of them. All the cutlery and kitchen utensils were spotlessly clean. Even the floor and ceiling seemed to be painted several times. In the middle of the restaurant, there is a pile of up to the waist of the person. In addition to ash and some decayed objects, there are a lot of humor and a corpse of an unusually large spotted man's. "It's really a great idea to find you," Lupin marveled after seeing this scene in front of him. "Even if I and Sirius clean up the kitchen together, it is estimated that it will take an entire afternoon. Your level of alchemy is far beyond my imagination. As far as I know, a wizard can be proficient in alchemy. Master the various runes and apply this freely. The worst is also the level of excellent alchemists. If you are inventing some new alchemy products, you can become the youngest alchemist master in nearly 1,000 years. I just took advantage of the knowledge left by some predecessors, which is far less powerful than you said," Ryan said with a shrug. "Also, using alchemy to clean up the home is indeed very fast, but the only flaw is that the cost is too high. Just to clean up a kitchen just now will cost 1 gallon and 7 psych, not counting my labor costs. So at home I would rather use pesticides, rags and feather dusters to solve the problem myself." "It's okay, I think I have enough gold coins to clean the whole house." At this time Sirius's voice came from the stairs, and Ryan saw him walking down the kitchen side, followed by a house elf. In addition to a dirty rag around his waist, like the waistcloth used by men in tropical countries to cover his body, he was almost naked. He looks very old, and his skin seems to be several times more than his body actually needs. Although his head is as bald as all house elves, the two big bat-like ears grow a big pile of white hair. His eyes are bloodshot, watery and grey, and his fleshy nose is very large. www.mtlnovel.com is like a pig's nose. He followed behind Sirius with a hoarse, low voice like a bullfrog, whispering incessantly. "Master is a nasty, ungrateful obscene billet, not even worthy of polishing his mother's shoe soles. Oh, my poor hostess, he even brought the werewolf home. Poor old creature, what can he do?" Speaking of this, Kreacher looked up at Ryan and Hermione, and his wrinkled face showed a surprised look. "Old Critch wants to know who the young master and the young lady are? He never knew there were such people in Britain." "We are just moles, not Miss Young Masters." Lane looked at Clyce and said, "Oh, old Critch will not admit it wrong. What's wrong with this world? There is a scum who thinks he is a mudblood, and he looks very proud." "Shut up and roll back into the cupboard upstairs." Sirius couldn't help but gave orders, and watching Kreacher scolded upstairs, Sirius also showed annoyance. He was completely mad. After listening to the crazy words of my mother's portrait for 10 years, after talking, Sirius turned out a pocket with a spell and threw all the garbage in the center of the kitchen, then looked at the kitchen and nodded with satisfaction. "It's a very good job, Ryan. Then I'll ask you to clean up the house. Don't worry about the materials, I will do it all." Sirius is indeed a black sheep from some angles, but it is really comfortable if he deals with him. At least the money is very refreshing and generous. Chapter 359. The Noble Black Family. After the kitchen was cleaned, Lupin moved a lot of ingredients into the kitchen to prepare the ingredients and cookware for lunch, and Hermione volunteered to stay and help the kitchen. Ryan led Sirius to clean up a few rooms upstairs for themselves and the Weasleys who came over at night to prepare for their stay. After cleaning up several rooms, Ryan found that the materials he used to draw the runes had bottomed out. More importantly, at this time he could not open the space door to get things in the grocery store, so the work could only be stopped. "It's okay. Today we have done far more than we expected." Sirius had no sense of frustration as Ryan. He felt that today's workload has far exceeded the planned amount. "Don't be so busy this afternoon, you can take a good rest. I will go to Diagon Alley tomorrow morning and buy all the things you want." "Ryan, Sirius, it's time for dinner." When Ryan and Sirius were talking in the upper room, they heard Hermione standing on the stairs and beckoning them to dinner. "Ah, hurry downstairs for dinner." "Actually, I bought a lot of dishes and seasonings with Lupin 2 days ago, but unfortunately the kitchen was not cleared when I set off, and the two of us could only eat the curry paste that didn't taste so good." Served with bread. "I think there must be something delicious at noon today." Walked into the kitchen, and there were 5 or 6 silver plates filled with food on a long table in the kitchen. In addition, there are 2 gold-plated candlesticks placed on both ends of the table. A few candles on the candlestick bring enough light to the cave-like deep basement. Let the stew just get hotter." Lupin directed a large saucepan with a wand from the end of the table. Unfortunately, neither Sirius nor I are good at housework magic, so most of the cooking can only be done by hand. "I think if someone like Mrs. Weasley who is good at housework magic would do it. It is estimated that this meal will take more than 10 minutes." "Will be ready." After the last stew was served, The 4 people were seated by the table. Everyone was hungry after a busy morning, so everyone was burying their heads in the first few minutes. No one spoke, only the sound of collision between plates and cutlery as everyone sat down to eat, and the friction of chairs. After eating a whole piece of roast lamb on the plate, Sirius raised his head and said, "A week has passed since I moved here, and I have finally eaten it seriously." "Remus, your craft is really good." "It's good." Ryan and Hermione nodded their heads. Although Lupin's craftsmanship and professional chefs still have a little gap, this level is already very high as cooking in daily life. In all fairness, neither Ryan nor Hermione have the same level of cooking skills as their mothers. A person who has lived for a long time will naturally develop his cooking skills. Lupin's words are bitter, but today, thanks to the help of Miss Granger, she has so many this magic can clean the blood and bones in the meat very cleanly, and also soften the meat to make the meat taste better. "This was when I saw you improve the death and withering magic for housework in the morning." Hermione, sitting next to Ryan, listened to Lupin's praise and whispered. It turned out that the blood draw in the blood magic, the bone pumping curse and the broken tendon curse are really good for processing meat in cooking. And the one free cast does not show that I used magic. After the meal, Lupin took over the task of washing the dishes. According to him, "At least I will do the magic of washing the dishes." Sirius looked at the plate on the table that was eaten cleanly. "The 2 of you have a great appetite, and I thought that the noon meal might be left." "Looking at you, I realized that I was old and could not eat anything." "Maybe our constitution is better, we should eat more." Ryan said that since he improved his diet, the amount of food has gradually increased, and now his meal is almost the same as that of an adult strong man. So this time when he came home to avoid worrying his parents, he only ate 6 full meals, and then took the time to fill up his stomach. In other words, Hermione is the same, especially after obtaining certain traits of the dragon. Her meal is almost the same as that of the adult male. Fortunately, before returning home, Ryan gave her several nutrients to keep her hungry at home. "Yes, Sirius. Can you show us his house?" "I have never seen this old wizard house," Ryan said to Sirius when he left the table. "This house has nothing but black magic and the rancidity of pure blood supreme." Having said that, Sirius still brought Ryan and Hermione upstairs to visit the house. According to him, although there is nothing worth mentioning in this house, it is always a good thing for young people to gain insight by looking at it. There is nothing important on the first floor. Sirius just puts forward the portrait of his mother under the curtain at the entrance. "Once you are disturbed, you will scream wildly, so it is better to be quiet when passing by." Then the 3 of them came to the living room on the second floor. This is a long room with a high ceiling. The tapestry hanging on the olive green wall is still dirty because it has not been cleaned before. Every time someone stepped on the carpet, a small dust rose, and long, yellow-green velvet curtains buzzed as if there were many invisible bees flying inside. "I think it takes at least 3 times as much material to clean this house." Listening to the buzzing in the curtains, Ryan said with some ugly face, "Easy here should be a disaster." "No problem. When I go to Diagon Alley tomorrow morning, I will buy some special sprays by the way," Sirius replied. "Sirius, your family has such a long history." Hermione marveled at the tapestry covering the entire wall across the room. "The tapestry looks very old, the color is already dim. It seems that the foxes have bitten several places." However, the gold thread embroidered on it was still shiny, and they clearly saw a family tree of branches and branches, which can be traced back to the Middle Ages. Several large characters are embroidered on the top of the tapestry. The noble and oldest black family is always pure. The reason why Hermione is amazed is that only the nobles with a long history in Europe will record their history. A family tree that dates back to the Middle Ages is very precious in the mole world. "Yeah, it's a pity that we only have black wizards. Occasionally, 1 or 2 decent people will be expelled by them. For example, speaking of here," Sirius pointed to a small black hole on the tapestry, "like being burnt marks of cigarettes. I used to be here, but after I escaped from home, my dear old mother destroyed me." Gretchen likes to whisper this story. "Are you running away from home?" "I was about 16 that year," Sirius said. "I've had enough." "Fortunately, Harry's grandparents took me in. I stayed with them when the school was on holiday. After graduation, I was also Uncle Alfat, who was cleared, left me with a considerable amount of gold www.mtlnovel.com so I could find a place to live." Lean looked closely at the family tree, and found that there were many places where the golden thread representing the marriage disappeared inexplicably. "I always feel that there is a lot missing on this picture," Ryan said, pointing to the places where they disappeared. "Indeed, the paranoid people in the family are in favor of maintaining the purity of the wizard's lineage, so they hide the marriages that make them feel unqualified. This is also no way. If you just want to make your children pure married people, your choice is very limited. So in the last resort, we can only marry some families that we may not look at, such as the Weasley family. Molly is a cousin who has a relationship with me. Arthur is probably the great-grandson of my uncle's grandfather. But you certainly can't see them here. Here are only some pedigrees that make them feel glorious. For example, the Malfoy family. It seems that pure-blood families have relatives with each other," Hermione said after careful study. "As far as I know, Most of the offspring of Muz will show such and other problems when their close relatives get married. Can the wizards solve this problem? No. Sirius shook his head. So there are very few people like us. If you look closely, you will find that many family descendants who pursue extreme pureblood have some problems. Unfortunately, they still have to maintain the so-called pureblood. I think even if there was not that year war, the so-called born and noble black family may not last long, Sirius said with a sigh. Chapter 360, Living Room Taobao. In Sirius' sigh, Ryan looked carefully at the bottom of the tapestry. Then I saw a very important name, Regulus Black. Oh, this is my brother. Sirius bent down and looked at the name carefully. Although he pretended not to care, Ryan could feel from him that he still had feelings for his family, even if there was a philosophy between them. Seriously different. Stupid idiot. He joined the ranks of Death Eaters. Sirius walked up to touch the name. Although my parents are not Death Eaters, they frantically support the pureblood theory. Under their influence, my stupid brother became a Death Eater. I think my parents must think he is a brave little boy. Hero. That 15 years ago, Hermione asked when he saw the death time under his name. He was killed by Voldemort. Speaking of here, Sirius' face was full of disgust, but Ryan heard a bit of nostalgia in his tone. From what I know, after his death, he was fallen deep, and then he is terrified of what others want him to do, and wants to quit. Alas, you can't finish it by sending a resignation report to Voldemort. Either sell your life or die. After speaking, Sirius stood up and pointed to a few names on the tapestry, saying, I haven't seen this thing for years. This is Phineas Nigellus, my great-grandfather, Hogwarts. The most unpopular principal. Alimenta Maleficent, my mother's cousin, tried to forcibly pass a Ministry of Magic decree to legalize the killing of moles. And my dear aunt, Eldorado, raised the elves cut off their heads when they were too old to hold the plate. This family tradition was pioneered by her. In short, these are the examples of the noble black family, and the best kind like me is far away. Although saying so, Ryan can still hear some nostalgia from Black's tone. I want to come to Sirius to enjoy the affection when he was young. Although most of these have been wiped out with the passage of time, Sirius will still be reminded of his loved ones after returning to his former home in solitude. Looking at Sirius with a low mood, Ryan quickly changed the subject. What's inside the dusty glass door cabinet on both sides of the mantelpiece? Oh, that's some antiques and other things in our family's collection. Sirius looked down at Ryan's finger and said, Right, aren't you alchemists? You can go and see what you like, as long as you are willing to take them all away. Anyway, I was going to throw them all away. He said that Blakeller opened the tattered curtains and tried to brighten the room. As a result, several adult foxes flew out of the folds of the curtain. Small teeth were exposed, the small and exquisite body was covered with thick black hair, and 4 small fists clenched angrily. Watching the fox lynch down on the person, Ryan and Hermione both released the Blade of Shadow. The foxes were cut into pieces directly in the air. A very powerful silent and rodless mantra. You are much stronger than I thought, especially Hermione. Sirius was snatched by Ryan and they just took out their wands before they even started. But this kind of magic is best not to be revealed in front of others, because it is too dark magic. Sure enough, as a member of the famous pureblood family, Sirius can distinguish the nature of their magic in a very short time. At the same time, his admonition is also very valuable. Given the level of most wizards in the magic world, this kind of evil magic is indeed not suitable for public use in front of a group of strangers. After dealing with the small trouble caused by Humizi, Ryan focused his attention on the glass cabinet in front of him. Because the cabinet was covered with dust, he only saw what was in the cabinet after opening the cabinet door. A variety of things are placed on the dusty partitions, such as some boring books that promote bloodlines like Born and Noble, the genealogy of the wizard, a group of rusty daggers, animal claws, and a plate the snake skin rises, and there are a large number of silver boxes with dull and black hairs on which the ancient Celtic sacrificial characters are engraved. Sirius. The ancient nobility that your family said may be true. Few people understand this kind of Celtic sacrifice text. Ryan took out a silver box and showed it to Sirius. Oh, when my father customized it, he just pressed the pattern left in a book and asked the silversmith to do it. He didn't know what was written on it. Sirius looked disdainful. After listening to it, Ryan looked at the silver box carefully, and found out that the text on it was messy and not a sentence at all. Dragon blood. It's a pity. Ryan took a decorative crystal bottle with a large opal embedded in the stopper, and found that the blood inside had dried up and the magic was almost lost. But this bottle is good. Large chunks of transparent natural crystals are rare. They can be cleaned and used for other medicines. Lane began to identify the things in the cabinet in the same way, while Hermione helped sort them and put them on the carpet. Seeing where the two were busy, Sirius said a little boringly, "What's so good about these things? Just throw them away." "Throw it away?" Ryan looked at Sirius in surprise, holding a newly identified music box in his hand. This music box can be used to hypnotize all the people who hear music around. There are a lot of things that can be reused. For example, this music box in my hand can be thrown out to hypnotize each other when it encounters an enemy. Maybe it will help our people get rid of a crisis. Such precious magic props are not bought. Goodbye. You actually said you want to throw it away. This of course can't be thrown away. Sirius changed his tone as soon as he heard the fight against the Death Eaters. These magic props naturally need to be left for those who need them. But what about the rest? He said that he was pointing to the corner of the cupboard where there was a pile of porcelain with a black family coat of arms, a pile of books breaching the pedigree, a few silver photo frames, a large gold ring with the black family coat of arms engraved and a grey. There is a Merlin Class I medal in the plopping box. www.mplnovel.com is different from the honors you two desperately obtained. I don't think there is anything memorable about this medal that my grandfather exchanged for years. Other things are similar. If you really don't like them and want to get rid of these things quickly. Ryan put down the music box in his hand and said, looking at Sirius' eyes, then you can clean them up and sell them for a good price. After all, we faced with a war. Resources will always be scarce in the war. Even a nate can't be wasted. For example, the pile of silver photo frames you are about to throw away. You can buy 2 or 3 bottles of white fresh essence after you sell it. The Merlin Class I medal that you don't like can be exchanged for a more useful alchemy product on the market. How can this be discarded casually? Ryan always felt that it was a pity that Sirius had thrown away a lot of things in the original text, especially the things that can be put in the decorative cabinets in this ancient family are definitely not cheap. Yes, Sirius suddenly laughed, and the laughter grew louder. If I let my family know that their baby collection has become a weapon against the theory of pureblood supremacy that they have insisted on for a lifetime, the expression on their faces will be very interesting. Ryan, you are right, just do it like this. After speaking, Sirius used a wand to clean up a carpet, and then sat there to help count the newly cleaned property. After picking up something, he helped to introduce the origin of these things while cleaning up, and Hermione took a shorthand feather to write down what he said, and then stuck the parchment on the corresponding object. Chapter 361, Pendant Box. After the three of them packed up in the living room for a while, Lupin also went upstairs to join them. With the help of this former professor of black magic defense technology, the progress of cleaning has been greatly accelerated. During this process, Ryan also got several good things, such as a silver utensil that can crawl like a spider and resembles a multi-legged tweezers. Because Ryan thought he could transform this thing into something useful, he calmed it down with a rune and asked Sirius to leave this thing. Sirius, I said which one you can take directly. What's inside? Lupin took out a souvenir box and broke it. How can't I open this thing? Sirius also took the box and tried it, and then curiously said, why don't I remember that this thing was put in the cabinet? Was it put in after I was kicked out? You actually remember the origin of everything in the cabinet? How did this happen? I can't remember where I came from. The decorative cabinet in my house, Hermione said in surprise when he heard Sirius. I hate these. Sirius smiled bitterly. But since I was 5 years old, my parents often brought me here to tell me the story behind a piece of things. Sometimes I was even told because I didn't say the glory behind an item. Meal only eats rusks and clean water. In this case, I remember everything even if I have been away for many years. Can I have a look? Ryan said after Sirius finished talking, and when they said they couldn't open, Ryan suddenly woke up because he thought of an important thing. Took the souvenir box. Lane found the so-called souvenir box, an octagonal gold egg-shaped pendant box. There is a gorgeous letter S on the lid, which is inlaid with emeralds. More importantly, when Ryan sensed the box through magic, he found that the magic rune on the box was far more complicated than other things. Black. Ryan turned and looked at Sirius seriously. If I read correctly, this thing should belong to the relics of Slytherin, one of the 4 giants of Hogwarts. It is very precious. You can even say that your glass cabinet is not as expensive as a pendant. According to your home habits, cannot be stuffed here without any records. It could only be that I was thrown out of the house and put it here. Sirius looked serious after listening to it. In this case, I think only Klitsch knows the source of this thing. After he finished speaking, he shouted please. With a snap, the house elf appeared in the living room. Oh. That nasty young master pointed finger at poor old Cleese again. It seemed that everything here really belonged to him. After he looked up at the decorative cabinet, he said, even he took things with family on it. Take it out, just like the robber who broke into this house. Shut up. Sirius interrupted Cleese's chatter, and then took out the pendant box. Tell me where this thing came from, and I ask you to answer truthfully. There must be no concealment and lies. Klitsch was only looking at his feet. He only looked up at Sirius's hand under Sirius' order. At first glance, Gretchen's expression froze. Then he panted sharply, his shriveled chest rose and fell sharply, and then he opened his eyes and made a blood-screaming scream. There is also a pendant box, Master Regulus's pendant box. Gretchen made a mistake. Gretchen failed to carry out the order of the master. Said he picked up a heavy silver box and was about to hit his head. Ryan and Hermione quickly caught him from left to right, then shouted to Sirius, hurry, let him stop. I order you to stop. Sirius, slightly stunned by what the house elf said, quickly recovered from Ryan's scream, and then ordered Gretchen. As soon as this command was issued, Gretchen stiffened there. They let go of Ryan, and Gretchen lay straight on the cold slate floor, and tears poured out of the recessed eye sockets. At this time, even the most insensitive people can see that this pendant box should involve very important things. You just said that the pendant box was Master Regulus, Sirius said. Then why does my brother have such a thing? What order did he give you that you did not complete? Gretchen, sit there and tell me everything you know about the pendant box and my brother's relationship with it. Klish sat up, curled up in a ball, sandwiching Cece's face between his knees, and began to rock back and forth. When he spoke, his voice was low and dull, but it seemed very clear in this empty and quiet living room. Master Sirius escaped, and it was better to go because he was a bad boy. His unruly behavior broke my hostess' heart. But Master Regulus has self-esteem. He knows the surname Black and him. What does pure blood mean? When he was 16 years old, he joined the Dark Lord's organization. He was so proud, so happy, and he could work for. Hey, my brother is too weak, and lack of opinion. When my parents incited me, I ran to follow the Black Devil. But the job of the Death Eaters is really not suitable for him. Hearing Sirius here is very sad in a low tone. If he left home like me, maybe he can now become a tornado chaser. Before I left home, I always listened to him talking about this. After listening to Sirius's memories, Klish's tears flowed even more, and the tears ran down his long nose into his grinning mouth, and he could see great teeth. 1 year later, one day, Master Luis came to visit Gretchen in the kitchen. Master Regulus had always liked Gretchen. Master Regulus said, he said. The elderly elf sobbed hard, shaking his body faster. He said that the Dark Lord wanted an elf. Master Regulus contributed Gretchen. It was a kind of glory, and Master Regulus said it was the glory of himself and Gretchen. Gretchen had to be black. Everything the devil wants him to do. And then go home. Speaking here www.mtlnovel.com. The painful memories made Gretchen's answer start intermittently, but the 4 wizards sitting here still listened carefully. So Gretchen reached the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord didn't tell Gretchen what to do, but took Gretchen to a cave by the sea. It was a big cave with a lake in it. There was a boat by the lake. The boat took me to the small island. In the lake there was a stone basin on top, filled with potions. The Black Devil let Gretchen drink. Gretchen drank, and when he drank, he saw a lot of horrible scenes. Klish's internal organs were on fire. Gretchen called Master Regulus to save him and the mistress, but the Dark Lord just laughed. He forced Gretchen to drink the potion. He threw a pendant into the empty basin, and filled the pot with potion again. Then the Dark Lord went on the boat and left Gretchen on the island. Gretchen needed water. He climbed to the edge of the island to drink the water in the Black Lake. Many hands, the hands of the dead, stretched out of the water. Come out and drag Klitsch down. Hoarse voice made everyone feel a trace of coolness rising from behind. Hermione heard subconsciously grabbing Ryan's hand here, and Ryan gently patted her back with his other hand to appease his emotions. Then what happened then? Sirius asked. Master Regulus said he wanted Gretchen to go home. Klitsch said, a weird smile here. The supreme law of house elves is the order of the master. The master tells Gretchen to go home, and Gretchen will go home. Chapter 362, Another Horcrux. Next, after you tell my younger brother these things, what did my younger brother do? After listening to the story just now, Sirius suddenly became excited. If it weren't for Lupin to hold him, he might just go up and grab Klitsch's neck and ask. Master Regulus is very worried, very worried. Klitsch screamed. Regulus told Gretchen to hide, don't leave the house. Then, after a while, one night, Master Luis came to the cupboard and found Gretchen. Master Regulus looked weird. Unlike usual, Gretchen could see that he was very confused. The young master asked Gretchen to take him to the cave that Gretchen had visited with the Dark Lord. He made you drink potions? Hermione asked a little disgustedly. Although she didn't plan to liberate the house elves now, as a person who grew up in modern society, she would be naturally averse to this slavery. Klish shook his head, crying and losing his voice. Hermione covered her mouth. She seemed to guess something. Master Regulus pulled out a pendant box from his pocket, just like the Dark Lord's one. Gretchen said, tears flowing down the sides of his long nose. He called Klitsch and hold it, and when the stone basin is dry, replace the pendant box. When it comes to this, Gretchen can't help himself. He stubbornly continued to say. He ordered Kreis to leave. Don't care about him. He told Kreis to go home, not to tell the hostess what he did, but must destroy the first pendant. Then he drink the potion. Klees replaced the pendant box, and watched Master Regulus dragged underwater. Then, don't say anything, don't say anything. Sirius grabbed his hair hard, showing a painful expression on his face. Regulus is still too weak. When he was told by his parents, he went to be a Death Eater. They all blamed me. If I could persuade him to leave this house that year. This is not to blame you, you did nothing wrong. Lupin comforted beside him. To say the wrong thing, The biggest mistake is also because of Voldemort's ambition and evil. Hermione also nodded in agreement. Then you brought the pendant box home. Ryan, who was watching Sirius comforting him, felt that he did not need to intervene, and was determined to ask everything about the pendant box. Try to destroy it? Critch can't leave a trace on it, the elder said sadly. Critch tried all the ways, but none of them succeeded. There are so many powerful magics on the box. Critch believes that it can only be destroyed from the inside, but it can't be opened. Critch repeatedly punished himself and tried again. Because Critch failed to execute the order, Critch couldn't destroy the pendant box. The mistress was crazy because of Thundermaster Girls is missing, and Critch can't tell her what happened. No, because Master Regulus banned, forbid him to say rock to his family, the family, things in the cave. Oh, God. Hermione could not help but turn to hug Ryan's neck, and then leaned her head on his shoulder. The flames of justice and courage will still burn in people's hearts even in the darkest hours, and having these noble qualities has nothing to do with their origin, education or even bloodline. The only thing needed is full of hope in my heart. I think Sirius's younger brother should have died with generosity in the hope of defeating the man. Ryan hugged Hermione's shoulder at this time and comforted her constantly. Ryan also felt that his nose was sour at this time. It was one thing to read in the novel, and it was another thing to experience it personally. This kind of person who gives his life for a noble idea can be called a true hero from any angle. At this time, the living room fell into a silence. Only Critch sniffed. After everyone calmed down, Ryan said to Lupin, who had almost recovered, "Professor, I think you may need to inform Principal Dumbledore. The magic level of house elves is not weaker than that of ordinary wizards. What defenses are so powerful and that person can hide in such a complicated way should be very important to that person. This is beyond what we can solve. I'm going to find Dumbledore now." Lupin immediately stood up and walked downstairs quickly after patting Sirius' shoulder. "I think Dumbledore should be able to destroy this thing," Ryan said as he looked downstairs. "You must destroy it." Critch sprang up and cried at Sirius, and Sirius was about to scold, but he swallowed back when he thought of something. It was just so stiff that Critch sat quietly and waited. After more than 20 minutes of silence, footsteps heard from the stairs. Dumbledore appeared in the stairs in a purple robe. After saying hello to Sirius and the three of them, he asked his purpose directly. "You said that you found a pendant box of Slytherin relics that were hidden by Voldemort in various institutions, and you all think that you can't harm this box. Can you show me that box?" "This is it." Ryan handed the pendant box to Dumbledore, and then added a sentence. "I feel this pendant box is a bit like the ring we met with Moody last time." "Got it." Dumbledore nodded solemnly and nodded his wand. He suspended the pendant box in the air with magic, and then pointed the wand at the pendant box to start casting. A golden red flame erupted from the head of his wand, and finally a phantom of a phoenix formed around the pendant box. 10 seconds later, the pendant box was completely wrapped in the air by a golden red flame to form an artificial sun. Dumbledore's mouth slowly began to spit out strange pronunciations, but Lane, who had learned the ancient magic text, knew it was an Anglo-Photox script, a variant of the famous Lund script in Britain. As the spell was spoken, a trace of black smoke emerged from the pendant box. After seeing this scene, Dumbledore waved the flame around the pendant box, and then reached for the pendant box. "Ryan, you feel right. This is indeed another Voldemort Horcrux." Speaking of which, Dumbledore's face was a little helpless. "And unlike the last ring, the core of this Horcrux is hidden in the Slytherin pendant box. So his protection is stronger than the last ring, which means that we are now facing Slytherin and Voldemort's double protection. Such protection is difficult to open directly with brute force." Looking at the uneasiness on the faces of the 4 people watching, Dumbledore added, "Although that is the case, the Horcrux is also more easily destroyed from another aspect. Because of the characteristics of this pendant box, Voldemort is also it is difficult to fuse the soul with such an object. It can be seen that his spell only simply strengthens the pendant box itself. www.mplnovel.com. So the split soul inside it should just be placed inside it's not things that are joined together. This means that as long as the box can be opened, a simple piece of soul can be easily destroyed." After Dumbledore finished speaking, Ryan reacted. "I have a guess. This is Slytherin's pendant box, so maybe it will use some Slytherin-specific methods to open it." "Are you talking about a snake head?" Dumbledore reacted immediately. "It's very possible, and the mysterious man also masters this language. He probably chose to use this thing as his Horcrux only after he discovered this point." Ryan told the news in a conjectural tone. "Your analysis should be correct." Dumbledore nodded. "But the problem is that the witches who speak snakes are hard to find." "I remember Harry should have. He once said that he had talked to a python before entering school," Lane said. "Ah, that's a choice. But because of the curse that didn't succeed in killing Harry, Voldemort's brain may sometimes communicate with Harry's brain. If you look for Harry, you will expose our plan to Voldemort probably, so this can only be used as a backup option. By the way, remember to keep this sentence secret, especially not to tell Harry himself," Dumbledore said seriously, and the other 4 nodded seriously. After seeing this option rejected by Dumbledore, Ryan thought a little and said to Dumbledore, I think I might speak snake language. Can I try it? Chapter 363. Destroy snake language. Are you? Dumbledore's sky blue eyes under the half-moon glasses were puzzled. Just trying to master an unknown language out of learning habits. At the time, I still thought it was Slytherin's unique ability to think how powerful there was in this language. Lane stared at Dumbledore's eyes and smiled. For a moment, it turns out that there is no special power in snake language, just a simple heterogeneous language. After I discovered this, I gave up learning, but in the process I learned some simple snake language vocabulary, so I am only now say try. It's better to try it. At least better than nothing. Dumbledore nodded and asked the other three to leave first. Now it's not as many people as possible. Voldemort is good at confusing people. I worry that too many people here may play a negative role. So now you better go downstairs. Sirius nodded and walked downstairs with Kreacher. Hermione gave Ryan a worried look as she went downstairs. Ryan returned a smile to reassure her. It's nice to be young, isn't it? After everyone went downstairs, Dumbledore's voice came from behind him. He just placed the pendant box on a tattered cupboard and winked at Ryan. Okay, let's get started. Do you need any preparations? Sorry, Professor, I need a preparation. Ryan said that he took 8 silver nails out of the space bag and nailed the pendant box on the cabinet for a circle, and then used the red rope with the rune stone on the 8 silver. The nails were wound several times to connect them together. A means of the east? Dumbledore looked closer at the runes carved on the stone. I can feel that this is for the soul. Well, we have to be cautious when facing Voldemort. After probably feeling Ryan's arrangement, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. Ryan arranged a few steps back after setting up the circle, and Dumbledore stepped forward to stand by the cupboard and pulled out the Gryffindor dagger to the pendant box in the center of the circle. The pendant box vibrated slightly after feeling the dagger approaching it. Fortunately, this pendant box stored in the cabinet for more than 10 years did not absorb much human life and soul. All it could do in the face of threat was to vibrate. This kind of dangerous thing must be destroyed as soon as possible, Dumbledore whispered while looking at the trembling pendant box. Then he turned to Ryan Ryan, I'll count to 3 later. You open the pendant box with a snake's tongue, and then I will use this dagger to strike the Voldemort soul hidden inside. Okay. Lane nodded and agreed to come down. So, after Ryan pulled out his wand and post, Dumbledore began to move. 1, 2, 3. Lane. Dumbledore shouted with a dagger at the Horcrux. Ryan immediately received a command from Dumbledore and snarled loudly in a snake-like manner at the pendant box. Open. The small gold cover of the pendant box popped open with a click. Behind the 2 small glass windows, there was a living eye blinking, black and bright, like Tom Riddle's eyes turned red, and his pupils became a line. The strange dark mist emerged from the pendant box, and Ryan immediately felt the great pressure had come from the magic circle. The evil force that this pressure belongs to even partially broke through the magic circle's defense and leaked out. I saw your heart, Albus Dumbledore. At this time a voice hissed from the Horcrux, and the defense Voldemort designed in the pendant box began to work. Although he couldn't make hands and feet on the relic of Slytherin, he made the inside soul into an offensive effect, attacking the most vulnerable side of the soul who attacked the Horcrux. You are an unfortunate person, eager for a happy and harmonious family, but you will never get it. Your best friend betrayed you and killed your sister. It also allows your only living relative to be close to you and refuse to recognize. Now all you do is for atonement, but you can never protect what you cherish most. Albus Dumbledore. From the 2 small windows of the pendant box, from the pair of eyes, a grotesque soap bubble emerged, and soon this thing rose from the pendant box and became the image of a girl. This person Ryan had never seen, but he knew it was Ariana, Dumbledore's younger sister, and a scar in his heart forever. This stimulated Dumbledore greatly. Lane could see tears flowing down his cheeks. Oops, Ryan thought of violently mobilizing the entire body of mana into the magic circle, which instantly suppressed the power of the pendant box. At the same time, he bit the tongue and shouted with the sound of wind and thunder, Professor, get started. As the soul inside the Horcrux was weakened, Dumbledore immediately got rid of the influence of Voldemort Horcrux. The sword flashed, and the dagger in his hand snapped into the pendant. Lane heard the sound of ding metal collision, followed by a long scream that touched the soul. Lane unconsciously released a defensive spell, but the Horcrux didn't have a dying blow. The girl's phantom disappeared, leaving only Dumbledore to stand there with the dagger down, looking down at the pendant box. Lane's eyes were also on the pendant box. He found that the glass of the 2 small windows inside the pendant box had been punctured, and the strange eyes were gone. The remnant of Voldemort's soul kept in the pendant box disappeared. The feeling of depression in the room disappeared. Professor? Ryan asked with some concern as Professor Dumbledore stood still. Dumbledore wiped his face with his hands and straightened his body after hearing it. www.mtlnovel.com. You just heard it, the principal asked in a low voice. This Ryan didn't know what to answer now, and could only stand there awkwardly. It's okay, you don't have to worry about anything. Watching Ryan was nervous, Dumbledore comforted. There is nothing in my past that can't be known to others. The reason why you rarely hear can only say that I am older and know these. Most of the people are gone. After speaking, Dumbledore smiled bitterly. Seriously, I was a bit worried about you when I started, because I think you are very similar to me when I was young, and I am so crazy in pursuing all kinds of knowledge. 5 or 6 minutes after, Professor Dumbledore outlined the history of his estray when he was young. Finally, looking at Ryan's eyes, he said seriously, you are better now when you are younger than me, but I still hope you must remember to pay attention to the people around you anyway. Don't wait to lose and regret it. Lane nodded seriously. He knew it was a summary of an old man's life lessons. The reason for telling Ryan today is purely out of an elder's concern for the younger generation, hoping that the younger generation will not make the same mistakes as him. Okay, I think we have been here too long. Now hurry up and call them Sirius, otherwise they will definitely be worried. After everything was said, Dumbledore asked Lane went downstairs to call the others. Ryan nodded and went straight downstairs to call someone. Chapter 364, Hero. Ryan, are you okay? Hermione asked when she saw Ryan's face exhausted and walked down the stairs, grabbing Ryan's hand. It's okay. Ryan comforted Hermione's hand gently. It's just that the magic power consumed at one time is a little too much. Just take a rest. You don't have to worry. For Ryan, the last full output just made him a bit off. But he can also see his own progress, which is at least much better than asking for help from others after getting the diary. Now his level is able to block Voldemort's full blow in front of him according to his last judgment. Although he still cannot reach the level of welfare or Voldemort's level, it is no problem to fight head-on and withdraw smoothly. Looked at the anxious face of Sirius, Lupin and Kreacher. Ryan turned around and said to them, Dumbledore has solved the pendant box, and he asked me to tell you that you can go upstairs now. After learning that the pendant box had been fixed, everyone hurried upstairs. Klitsch was the first to take the lead. He snapped his fingers and used the phantom to show up and rushed upstairs. Others could only climb up the stairs. When Ryan and Hermione climbed the stairs, they found Kreacher crying with a destroyed pendant box sitting on the floor of the living room, while Sirius was sitting on a sofa covering his face and sobbing. Lupin patted his back to comfort him. Regulus is very brave, Dumbledore said in a very solemn tone. It is a pity that he did not join the Order of the Phoenix, otherwise he would not need to fight alone, and he would not have to sacrifice himself to deal with such things. After finishing, Dumbledore turned to Kreacher. You know, Regulus was killed by Voldemort. Klish heard the name and fought a cold war. What I want to tell you is that everything we have done here is to do our best to kill Voldemort to end this war, so I hope you can cooperate with us a little bit, Dumbledore said seriously. In this way, you can kill the big demon who can't even say the name, and avenge my master Regulus. Kreacher swallowed. It's a pity that because of his evilness and power, we can't make this guarantee. Dumbledore bent down and looked at Clegg, saying that in his capacity, there was no need to deceive a house elf. But as long as we are alive, we will fight against him until we or he completely dies. Yes, I am the same. After listening to this sentence, Sirius also raised his head. I swear, I will fight him with all my energy before Voldemort Volfa. Revenge my stupid brother. Clegg knew. Clegg stood up and bowed deeply, even touching his head on the carpet. Although Kletch still thinks Sirius is a prodigal son, he is now willing to recognize him as his master and serve him. I want to bring him back, Sirius said suddenly. I can't let my brother stay at the bottom of the cold lake alone, said Sirius. Stood up and walked towards the door. I want to take him home. Sirius. Ryan stopped him. Klish just said that the cave is full of corpses. I have a way to control them without destroying them, so you can find your brother's body. But I need some materials to do something in advance. May I wait for an afternoon? Let's start together tomorrow. Really? Sirius rushed over and grabbed Ryan's shoulder. Is everything you said true? Hurry and tell me what you want. I will buy it now. What he said should be true. Professor Dumbledore's voice rose beside him. Ryan's alchemy level is not low, and he is not a big talker. If he says he is certain, I believe he should have a way. After watching Ryan write a shopping list of more than a dozen items, Sirius hurried down the stairs. Ryan began to ask Chris about the specific layout of the cave. Do you need the blood of the wizard when you enter the door? Dumbledore nodded after hearing it, with contempt in his breath, even disappointed. This is very consistent with Voldemort's habit. He likes the design that allows his opponent to weaken himself before entering. It has always been like this. Shall we go to Diagon Alley to buy some blood? Ryan suggested. There are a lot of downcast wizards. If we are willing to pay Gallon, there must be someone willing to sell blood. I'll go. Lupin volunteered. I'm more familiar with those wizards. Lupin hurried down the stairs and left after quickly receiving the money bag from Ryan. After half an hour, both of them came back. Sirius carried 2 large pockets, while Lupin took out 2 bottles full of blood from his arms. After seeing them home, Professor Dumbledore left. In this situation, he is very busy as the principal of Hogwarts and the supreme leader of the Order of the Phoenix. I just arrived here just because of an important event. Now after the matter is processed, I naturally need to leave to do his thing. After 5 or 6 hours until the arrival of the Weasley family in the afternoon, Ryan had been drawing one by one a corpse symbol on the kitchen table. Because he did not know how many corpses Voldemort had hidden in that lake, he could only paint as many as possible. While eating dinner, the Weasleys also rushed over. Under the operation of Clegg and Mrs. Weasley, The dinner is very rich. www.mplenovel.com. Especially the French onion soup and charcoal grilled lamb chops are the best tastes that Lane has ever tasted. I'm ready. When will I leave? Ryan asked Sirius while eating. We set off after eating. I can't imagine that my brother actually stayed in that place for more than 10 years. Sirius apparently fidgeted when he learned of Regulus's whereabouts. Sirius' brother, what the happened? Mrs. Weasley asked, looking at the sad Sirius. Lupin began to tell the warrior's life story slowly. He is really a hero. After listening to the brief introduction, the atmosphere on the dining table suddenly became dull. As those who had experienced that dark age, the Weasleys naturally knew how much courage and perseverance it would take to stand alone against the Dark Lord in that situation. Oh, I'll go help, too, Mr. Weasley said. It's still dangerous for the two of you to bring a minor wizard to that kind of place. I have fought in that dark age anyway. I think I can help you little. The twins were clamoring at this time and had to follow, but they were easily suppressed by Mrs. Weasley. After appeasing the children in the family, Mrs. Weasley looked at Mr. Weasley with some worry, but in the end he did not speak out to stop him. The clock came to 8 in the evening. After hugging her farewell to Hermione, Ryan left the kitchen with Sirius, Lupin, and Mr. Weasley plus Gretchen and walked towards the exit of the house. Chapter 365, Dark Lake. When several people walked to the door, Mr. Weasley tripped on the giant umbrella stand made of the broken leg of the monster because he was not familiar with it. As a result, he grabbed the 2 velvet curtains covered with insect A's and pulled it away. Oh, shit! Sirius hadn't finished talking yet. A terrifying, deafening, and creepy scream came from a portrait behind the curtain. Beast, cheese, dirty and sinful sons, hybrids, freaks, ugliness, get out from here. How dare you defile my ancestors' house? Shut up. Sirius grabbed the curtain. You terrible old witch, you killed Regulus. I found him, and I'm going to pick him up now. What, my child, Regulus, dead? The old lady suddenly turned pale and showed a sad expression. Each portrait in the wizarding world has its own incomplete consciousness after painting, and many of these prototypes are slowly instilled. This portrait of Sirius's mother should have been drawn before her death. In addition to a set of pure-blood concepts, the rest is the dissatisfaction with the elder son Sirius and the memory of the missing son. So after hearing the news of Regulus's death, the portrait immediately showed a sad feeling. Yeah, it's you, my good mother. He killed you to death. Sirius pulled the curtain hard, but the woman in the portrait at this time did not roar as usual, but stayed sitting there blankly. In a silence, 4 people and a house elf walked out of the mansion. Then Klitsch took them one by one into a big cave. After releasing a lantern grass and raising it to his hand, Lane could see a water hole at the end of the cave. A stone step extended from the water. The air around was silent and cold, with a sea smell. This means that this place should be by the sea. This is it. Kretsch's low voice came. The door that needs blood is in front, but unfortunately there are strange magics inside. Klee's phantom manifestation can't accurately locate the space inside, so he can only come out from there, but he can't go in from outside. Kretsch did wait to complete the master's order. Said he would knock his head on the stone floor. Fortunately Sirius stopped him. This is enough, so stop. He said that he walked to the stone wall pointed out by Klitsch and pointed his wand at the rock there. Suddenly, there was an outline of an arch, emitting dazzling white light, as if there was a strong light behind the crack. It should be here. Finally, he took out the blood of the wizard he had bought before and poured it up against the outline of the arch. Perhaps Sirius was harder, and the whole rock surface was covered with shiny, dark red blood beads. After the blood was absorbed by the rock wall, the outline of the arch was not hidden as before. The blood-stained rock in the arch suddenly disappeared, revealing a doorway, which seemed to be endless darkness. Go ahead. After Sirius raised the lantern grass he had given him with one hand, he took the lead with his wand and walked in. The others also followed him in the same posture with vigilance. Only Ryan did not take the wand, but he had a thick stack of yellow paper notes in his hand. Under the illumination of the light source in their hands, they saw a very weird scene in front of them. They stood on the shore of a large black lake. The lake was extremely wide, and they could not see the opposite shore in the distance. The cave they are in is very high, and they can't see the top of the cave when they look up. Far away, as if in the middle of the lake, a hazy, green light shimmered, reflected in the dead lake below. What is more evil is that, apart from the light source in their hands and the green light in the distance, the darkness is completely indelible. Even the lantern grass, which is dedicated to breaking the darkness, won't shine far. This means that the darkness here probably comes from some kind of magic rather than a natural product. Let's go forward, Sirius whispered. Be careful not to step into the water. Everyone get a little closer and let Ryan walk in the middle. After adjusting the formation, their footsteps stepped on the narrow rocks by the lake and began to walk around the lake shore. Finally came to a shore. This shore is no different from other places, all the same dark and cold. But Gretchen still recognized it, and under his direction, several people pulled out the boat where Voldemort lived there. We have to go to the island, where Regulus was dragged into the water. It's easier to find it there. Not to mention that the lake here is too narrow and we can't open it. But this only one wizard is allowed to cross the lake. What should we do? Lupin asked. Let me go, Sirius said impulsively, but was stopped by Ryan. "It's better for us to act collectively. After all, this place is too weird. It's not a good idea to move apart." Ryan stood on the side of the boat and made a few gestures and looked at the runes that appeared on the boat. "And there is a way to let us all pass." After this sentence caught everyone's attention, Ryan explained, "I checked the ship just now and found that the above restrictions are not based on things like weight or soul, but on magic power. That is to say, the designer of this set of organs only restricts the magical power of an adult wizard." His lake. Speaking of this, Ryan smiled a little, "and I just have a way to shield the magic of the wizard." After he finished, he took out several bracelets with a runestone on his body. "Just bring it on." In addition to Sirius, several people have worn bracelets. Then the Indian squeezed the boat in a way of transportation. After everyone got on the boat set off immediately. Everything is automated, and there seems to be an invisible rope pulling it towards the green light in the middle of the lake. The lake is calm and the lake is very clear. As we slowly approached the island, corpses began to appear at the bottom of the water, a few at first, but later more, and finally we could even see corpses as white as marbles stacked on the bottom of the lake. "Merlin, how many murders did he kill?" Mr. Weasley moaned when he saw the bodies. After a few minutes, the boat hit a thing lightly and stopped. Under the illumination of the light source in his hand, Ryan found that they came to a smooth rock island in the middle of the lake. www.mplnovel.com. The island is actually a whole piece of black rock, with 100 or 200 square meters. The top is very flat. There is only a stone basin in the middle, and the green light comes from the potion inside. "Okay, let me arrange it, and it will start when it is arranged," Ryan said after several people set foot on the island. Then he drew a line on the rocky ground with a dagger in his hand and filled them with a golden powder. 10 minutes later, it fell with a last stroke. The whole island became a large magic circle. Everyone on the scene felt that the magic circle was flowing with vitality and light that was incompatible with the surrounding environment. Ryan pulled out 7 or 8 cans of sunlight crystals from his pocket at this time and said to several people next to him, "When I launch the magic circle, you will evenly sprinkle the golden crystals in these cans into the surrounding water." "Will climb up on his own. After encountering my magic circle, he will be tempered directly." After speaking, Ryan handed the yellow paper to Arthur and Lupin. "But there is a limit to the operation of this magic circle. If a large number of corpses pile up, please throw this thing to their dense place. This magic prop can slow down and weaken them." The 2 people took the paper and ordered it. Nod. Ryan pulled out a few more paper notes to Sirius and Gretchen. "When you see Regulus, draw a note on your hand and paste it on him, then you can bring him in." Sirius nodded seriously. "Okay, 3, 2, 1 start." After all preparations, Ryan launched the magic circle. Chapter 366, Hero Home. After the magic circle started, a bright, golden red firing rose from the island, even suppressing the green light in the stone basin. At the same time, Mr. Weasley and Lupin directed the sun-crystallized jars with their wands to explode them near the lake. The crystals of the sunlight in the bottle fell like raindrops, and when they fell into the lake, they immediately radiated light when they met the water. The object also touched the lake water and also inspired the magic set here. The lake was stirred up violently, and Bay Senson's head and hands came out of the dark water. The men, women, and children all had hollow, non-visual eyes and turned towards the island. "Float over." However, these corpses were weakened by a layer of sunlight crystals thrown into the water, so as soon as they arrived at the fire circle formed by the magic circle on the island, black smoke erupted from the body and quickly turned into ashes. Everyone on the island could see milky white souls slowly rising from the ashes, and his complexion became serene. Finally bowed to Ryan and saluted into a little golden light. With the help of Mr. Weasley and Lupin, even if there were some corpses gathered, they did not pose any threat to the magic circle itself. After more than 20 minutes, Sirius shouted violently, "I found it!" After that, Cleach rushed out, and soon the 2 of them rushed in with a spell on their forehead. This corpse has black hair and looks a little like Sirius, but it is thinner and smaller than Sirius, nor as handsome as Sirius. "If you want to come here, it should be Sirius' younger brother Regulus. Can I wipe out the corpse here before I go?" Ryan looked at the souls who left the world with a smile after saluting to themselves in the air with a pity. As a successor of the Moshant school, he felt he had an obligation to free these poor people. "Of course, as long as you can hold it," Sirius said hoarsely, holding his brother, and Mr. Weasley beside him echoed. "Once the corpses have gathered a sufficient number, it is very dangerous, and now they are completely destroyed, which is equivalent to successfully weakening the power of the mysterious man. So we will help you do this." Lupin also nodded firmly. "Thank you." After that, Ryan continued to seriously operate the magic circle to practice waves of corpses, and other people were responsible for solving the piles of unmanageable guys. After finally fighting for more than 4 hours, they cleaned up more than 5,000 corpses in the lake. "We succeeded." After waiting for 7 or 8 minutes and no more corpses climbed ashore, several people raised their wands to investigate the surrounding conditions. After making sure that the bottom of the lake became clean, they sat down directly. After 4 hours of fighting, everyone felt extremely tired from spirit to spirit. "Right, what kind of magic did you use?" Why have we never seen it? Mr. Weasley sat there and asked breathlessly. A kind of magic from the East, which is very effective against undead or dark creatures, but it is much less effective for living people. Ryan's explanation made Mr. Weasley nodded because he was not careful just now. I just felt a bit hot when I met the ring of fire, but I was not burned. He said that immediately. After a few minutes of rest, several people packed up and walked out. Sirius refused to help others to carry his brother's body behind his back. Everyone was quiet along the way, only to hear Cleach's sobbing. Opened the stone arch with another bottle of blood and walked into the cave. The 4 people were led by Kreacher and returned to 12 Grimmauld Place. When the door of the house was opened, all the gas lamps in the corridor lighted up in an instant. The curtain covering the portrait of Sirius's mother was opened, but this time the portrait did not scream or yell, just looked at the body behind Sirius and cried with her mouth covered. Immediately, all the portraits in the corridor cried. "You are back? Is everything going well?" It was late at this time. The rest of the Weasley family had already gone to sleep. Only Hermione was there with Mrs. Weasley drinking coffee and waiting for several people to return. After hearing the sound of the door, the 2 came out from the tea room on the first floor to greet them. "Everything went well. We recovered the hero's body and at the same time wiped out thousands of corpses. It can be said that our plan was successfully completed." Mr. Weasley hung his robe on the hanger and said to his wife too. While they were talking, Ryan, along with Hermione and Lupin, helped Sirius to put Regulus' body on a temporarily transformed table, and then Ryan conducted refining. This belongs to Ryan's professional category. Master Jushu's masterpiece was this, and Ryan naturally learned a full set. As the spell was pronounced, a trace of black gas emerged from Regulus' body and disappeared. The expression on the body's face also softened, and finally, the soul trapped in the body by black magic was liberated. The soul floated in midair and looked at the people below, and saw this scene. Kreacher burst into tears, and serious tears ran down his face. "He has something to worry about," Lane said, looking at the unwilling soul. "Quickly bring that pendant box." Klish quickly moved to the living room on the 2nd floor, and when he came back, he held the broken pendant box. After seeing the opened pendant box, Regulus's soul finally showed a smile, and then disappeared in a golden light. At the same time, the frown on the face of the body was also stretched out, as if falling asleep. That night, Ryan stayed up all night and used alchemy to make a coffin with Hermione's help, using furniture and silverware in the mansion as raw materials, and set up Regulus. Later, when everyone went back to bed, Ryan saw Sirius and Kreacher sitting in front of the coffin and whispering something to Regulus. The next day, everyone buried Regulus together in the Black family grave. Dumbledore made a special trip to deliver a eulogy for Regulus. After the funeral, Sirius asked everyone to leave first. He would say a few words to the tombstone. After half an hour, Sirius and Kreacher returned together. Kreacher wore the pendant box that used to be Voldemort's Horcrux on his neck. "I told him that now to defeat Voldemort, he can only be temporarily burdened with the reputation of a Death Eater. But one day I will let everyone know that my brother is a hero." www.mplnovel.com. Black came back, everyone said aloud, and also engraved this oath into their souls. After this day passed, great changes took place in the mansion. The portrait of Sirius's mother no longer screams, at best she rolls her eyes at those who don't look at her. Kreacher also seemed to be refreshed, and with his help, the progress of the room cleaning was greatly accelerated. In just one day, they cleaned up 1/3 of the rooms. At the same time, I repaired a wall clock that likes to spray screws and a robe that tried to strangle everyone. Hermione found a ferocious ghoul in a bathroom, which was just the opposite of the cute ghoul from the Weasleys. But just before the ghoul's claws were about to catch Hermione, Hermione's sword in his hand had pierced the ghoul's brain. "Good job." Ryan praised Hermione's skill next to him. However, Sirius, who disinfected the carpet on the other side, was shocked. "Is the student taught by Hogwarts already so powerful?" Hearing these words, Ryan and Hermione smiled at each other, and then they packed up the rooms again. It must be said that the biggest change recently was Sirius. After returning from the cemetery, he appeared to be full of energy, and he also appeared a lot of sunshine. According to him, he is not alive now, and his future is not only to live out himself, but also to fulfill his brother's wish. Therefore, the following days must actively face each day. Therefore, he is now fully devoted to the work of the Phoenix Society and decides to avenge his brother by defeating Voldemort. It also fulfilled Regulus's dream of revitalizing the Black family. Chapter 367, New World. After tidying up the room, several students were idle because the Phoenix Society feels that this kind of battle to face life and death does not require minor students to play for the time being. Compared with the Order of the Phoenix, forcing Draco Malfoy to kill Dumbledore's Voldemort is even more evil. Since there is no work, Ryan naturally puts their homework first. If you think about Hogwarts still maintaining class even in such a bad situation, you know that even if you participate in the fight with the Dark Head, homework is inevitable. But for Ryan and Hermione, these operations are not complicated. In just over a week, 2 people have completed all their homework. After that, they started to make some magic props and potions for the Phoenix Society as a help to the Phoenix Society. In addition, Sirius was very interested in learning about the content of the Weasley joke shop, so Ryan and the twins persuaded Sirius to invest part of the knowledge of Gallon and Black's family in this shop. For this reason, Ryan and the twins each gave out 10% of the shares to Sirius. Sirius asked Ryan after getting the shares, and then turned around and gave 5% to Lupin. So now Lupin has a formal job. The gold designer at the Weasley joke store was the think tank and commander of the four-member robbery group at the time, as well as the producer of the live map. Lupin has a high level of magic props, and he also has ideas. Even if he still bears the task of Dumbledore, but only a little time to come back to rest, he successfully helped the Weasley twins to complete the defense suit research. Ron and Ginny helped Ryan with their work after the assignment was completed. For the little wizards of the Ron brothers and sisters who were born in the magic world, it was a lucky thing to be allowed to watch while working as an alchemist. Things are up. In particular, Ryan will give them some knowledge at this time, so that every time they help, they will be full of help. After everything was on track, Ryan decided to open the next world. Fortunately, the house is almost packed now. There are enough empty rooms for everyone to live alone. This is also convenient for him to go to Wanji grocery store. During this time, several guests came to the Wanji grocery store, but unfortunately they all came from the world of some modern dramas. Relying solely on Rose Crystal can handle these on-site guests. There are not many natural gains, all are similar to programming, Clark class and not very valuable ability. Look at them as long as the gold shares Rose Crystal agreed to exchange. There are no valuable guests. He said this while watching Rose Crystal. Ryan feels that she is more and more like a human being. This should be the process of completing the soul that teacher Luo Zhen said. Bite brother and sister, what kind of world are we going to go this time? Soon, Rose Crystal asked her with her head tilted and adjusted her mood playfully. I think we need to find a stronger world. Ryan looked at Rose Crystal and said, this time, when I met Voldemort and found that I didn't have the skills to finalize it, so I hope to find a strong enough world for me to further improve me fighting level. After finishing, Ryan went to the store door and pressed the store door with both hands to inject the 64 offset point. After seeing that the space in the door frame was filled with blue, Ryan, with rose crystals on his shoulders, stepped into this 7th level world. The other exit of the space door is in a wood, and Ryan still does not recognize which world this is. Because woods are so common, it can even be said that 9 out of 10 worlds have woods. Let's go around first, maybe we can find a familiar place, Ryan said to the rose crystal on his shoulder before turning around in the forest. This forest is very vast, and even has a fight with the last Kahai. Ryan and Rose Crystal quickly passed out in the woods. As they walked through a thicket of trees, they heard a rustling sound beside them. Soon, several large spiders sprang out of the forest. Ryan felt the power of darkness from them and the characteristics that were out of step with the surrounding natural environment, which reminded him of the 8-eye spider in the Forbidden Forest that he had almost cleaned up. So when these spiders threw up, Ryan easily used shadow magic to kill them. However, they seemed to be walking in the wrong direction, feeling more and more spiders. In the end, even in the forest on both sides of the place where 2 people walked, the bodies of spiders fell down. Just as Ryan planned to take out his broom and run away from the sky, a sharp arrow flew by and shot a spider trying to get out of the jungle beside him. At the same time, there was a shout in front of you, hurry up and run forward, we will help you stop the spider. Don't worry, we can get rid of those spiders. It's just that we lost our way before and don't know where to go, Ryan said while casting chain lightning to turn dozens of spiders into coke. On the other side, the rose crystal releases a large number of amethyst needles. These crystal needles will break into the spider's eyes and will move at high speed and irregularly, completely destroying the spider's internal organs. Every spider that was hit quickly shivered and fell. Soon Ryan and Rose Crystal walked to the position they just reminded a moment ago. Only then did they find that there was a whole armed squad with bows and arrows hidden in this place. Every member of the squad took out a knife and watched they. Legolas, seeing the familiar handsome face of the man who led the team, combined with his dress, Ryan immediately knew that he was on the Middle-earth continent of the Lord of the Rings. Recently, a large number of large spiders have always appeared in the dark jungle. The elves living here repeatedly try to clean up these things. Unfortunately, no matter how to clean up, there will always be a large number of spiders added from the outside. In this case, the elves can only organize many teams to keep the number of large spiders in the jungle within a safe range through continuous patrols. Legolas as a prince in this situation, it is his duty to lead a patrol to protect the people. Not to mention that patrol can also avoid the sight of his father, Sir Andui, and stay with the Captain Taolaya. So Legolas liked the job that most elves regarded as a chore. Was planning to move to another place just after clearing a wave of spiders. I saw 2 humans standing in the place covered with spiders. So out of kindness, Legolas reminded the 2 people loudly and shot an arrow at the same time, killing the spider that was too close to the 2 people. www.mtlnovel.com. But what I did not expect was that the 2 people with a powerful force to quickly clear all the spiders around. While watching the 2 men approaching, He and the team members pulled out their arms with vigilance. But I didn't expect that the boy opposite called his name directly. How do you know my name? Legolas asked cautiously with a knife. I am a traveler from other worlds. I know your existence through some special methods. Ryan told his truth, even if it sounds incredible. There are many powerful creatures in this world, and Maya like Gandalf may be able to see something from Ryan. In order to avoid future leaks, it is better to tell the truth now. Anyway, the elves are kind creatures, and they will not kill people indiscriminately. The words made Legolas a little ignorant, but he still asked dutifully, then why do you come to our world? I am a sorcerer scholar and a businessman with several world resources, so I hope to communicate with you whether it is knowledge or materials. I hope to be able to exchange with you. This ? You go to the Elven King Hall with me. I have to tell my father about this. After hearing Ryan's request, Legolas thought about it and finally told Ryan helplessly. Only when he sees his father can he decide. Okay. Ryan was very happy, because he had always wanted to visit the world-famous Elven King Hall since he was watching a movie. Chapter 368, Elven King Hall. There are not many roads in the dark jungle, and most of them remain in their most primitive state. However, Ryan moved quickly and easily in the forest, not slower than the elves around him. After watching for a while, the elves around him relaxed their vigilance because they felt a natural breath from Ryan. Neither the human beings who surrendered to evil or the ogres and orcs are so close to nature. Soon everyone started chatting together. The little puppets and Taobao had a very good conversation, and the story of Ryan telling the world he had experienced also made these elves who had been living in the woods for hundreds of years feel refreshed, especially when they heard the story of how Ryan used the power of nature in a world to destroy those evil undead with plants. They all had a taste of hating the enemy. Of course, through this kind of chat, the relationship between everyone also quickly narrowed. Because everyone can travel fast in the forest, Lane found a stone-paved path covered with moss under his feet an hour later. After stepping on this trail, the elves seemed a lot happier, because it meant that they were almost home. After walking through the path through the dangerous valleys, forests, swamps and streams, they finally came to a rushing stream of 6 or 7 meters wide. There is a narrow stone bridge without guardrails on the stream. On the other side of the stream is a steep stone hillside. There is an exquisite stone gate directly across the bridge, where several elves in armor guarded with spears is different from the imaginary elf residence. The Elven King's Court in the dark jungle is an underground building. This should be to commemorate the Minicus, the city of thousand grottos. Quickly led by Legolas, Ryan met the host Thranduil here. Thranduil is a good-looking man, wearing an extremely beautiful silver robe, with a crown of red leaves and berries woven between the blonde hair on his head. After talking with his son, Thranduil said in a magnetic voice, "Welcome, friends of nature. I can see the favor of nature on you from your body, and I think what you say should be true. So as long as you are not malicious, I agree to conduct transactions with you." Soon, Ryan was brought to a very empty place by Legolas and Toria, and there were many elves around. "Where is this rose crystal flying in midair?" asked curiously. Probably because there are not many things that can fly without wings in this world, plus the beautiful appearance of rose crystal. The elves coming and going around looked at the rose crystal with curious eyes, which made her feel a little uncomfortable. "This is the largest square inches the Elven King's Hall. People generally gather here and trade some things they need. So my father asked me to bring you here," Legolas said next to him. "That means I can show my goods?" Ryan asked. After seeing Legolas nod, Lane began to take out pieces of specialty from all over the world. In view of the habits of the elves, this time the product is not industrial equipment. It is mainly a variety of magical plants and some extraordinary materials, with some high-end daily necessities such as porcelain and lacquerware. Soon, these exotic products attracted elves coming and going. After all, Ryan is not just for making money, so he uses magic to tell the elves aloud whether it is knowledge, interesting items or even stories that Ryan himself is interested in can be used as a way of trading. And now Taolaya is idle. In addition to the team, Legolas was hired by Ryan at the cost of a set of magic seeds to help set the price. Lane found that sunshine mushroom and sunflower are the most popular trading items, and even many elves can't wait to get around their houses after they get it. When they learned how to use the crystal of sunlight, with the help of their own natural magic, the underground city was full of sunlight in just a few hours. Ryan felt that this made the Elven King's Hall completely lose the previous mysterious feeling, but Taolaya disregarded the mysterious silence in Ryan's mouth. "Our elves have always loved nature and the sun. Only because of the change, we will put the King City underground for safety reasons. But this does not mean that we like this dark environment. You bring the sunshine that came here even gave people a feeling of going back to the golden age when we were still living on the ground. Haven't you seen more and more people coming out now? This already shows our hobby." Sure enough, as the sunlight spread further, more and more elves appeared nearby. Even Thranduil was finally disturbed. After asking what happened, Thranduil and Ryan signed a large order, almost emptying Ryan's reserve of these amazing plants, because he found that he could use these magical plants to build a green line of defense in the dark dense forest, and make the dark dense forest bright again. "But, Thranduil, this forest is so big, You may need more than 100 years to complete such an ambitious goal. When handing several planting methods and seeds to Thranduil, Lion pointed out the biggest flaw in the Elven King's approach. It's okay. The Elven King seemed very happy. As a longevity species in the future, you should gradually get used to our way of life. Otherwise, you will be very sad in the future. I think allowing you to do business is the most correct one I have made in these hundreds of years. One of the decisions, because of your arrival, today is also the happiest day for my people for hundreds of years. Looking down where his fingers are, every elf has a cheerful smile on his face. Many elves around have begun to sing and dance, playing musical instruments. At the same time, many elves rushed over with food and wine. www.mplnovel.com. It seems to be holding a feast. Everyone hasn't been so happy in years. Legolas sighed. In this atmosphere, Ryan and Rose Crystal also joined the banquet. Unlike a few hours ago, the stone-filled underground city has now been flooded with green plants brought by Ryan from several worlds. Coupled with the crystallization of sunlight, it now feels like a forest. Under the greeting of the elves, Ryan and Rose Crystal enjoyed an absolutely sumptuous feast. Unlike what was previously imagined, the elves here still eat meat. However, all the food tastes a little faint, but fortunately, the cooks of the cooks are very superb. After all, the almost immortal elves have enough time to learn various skills. Let Ryan experience the ingredients themselves from these dishes tasty. This trade has been going on for a week, and Ryan has also received a lot of gains. Thranduil opened all the libraries in the city to Ryan, and allowed Ryan to even go to the most secret room in the library to view the notes that Kelly Blimp left while casting the elves' 3 rings. After recording all the things he was interested in, Ryan went to the palace to say goodbye to Thranduil. In the previous chat, Ryan learned that in recent days someone had seen Gandalf and Thor in Oakshield at the inn discussing the recovery of the Lonely Mountain. This represents a year before the opening of the Hobbit story. After knowing this time node, Ryan decided to look elsewhere because he feels he can do something during this time. Chapter 369, Valley City. My friend, why don't you stay longer here? Isn't everyone neglecting when you entertain you? Asked Thranduil, who hurried into the palace wearing armor. Recently, he was very busy, because after the experiment it was discovered that the magical plants brought by Ryan were not weak against the evil spiders in the woods. He began to take the elves to build a green line of defense to temporarily circle the woodland near the capital. So during these days he has been leading people to set up defenses outside the city. Just now he heard that Ryan was leaving and hurried back from the outside riding a big horn deer. Everyone is very enthusiastic, but I came here for a deal. I heard that you can reach Cheng'u Town down the river, running down the river near the Elven King's Hall. In Cheng'u Town, continue to follow the river. There is an abandoned valley city. I want to rebuild it as the core of my trade in this place. Heard that it was a human abandoned town, and Thranduil had no objection. Anyway, it has nothing to do with elves, let alone that the city has been completely abandoned, and morally speaking, there is no fault in occupying it. But Thranduil was a little worried about Smaug, the evil dragon that destroyed River Valley City decades ago. But after watching Ryan demonstrate how to break a 3-meter thick rock with a piece of ordinary steel, he let go of his heart and was also hopeful that Ryan would defeat the dragon. After weighing the pros and cons, hesitated a few times, Dewey decided to tell the Prince Legolas, who was on the side. Legolas, Mr. Lion may need some local guidance and help this time. So you lead a team of elves to help him. Follow. Dewey turned to Ryan and pleaded, I hope you can guarantee Legolas' safety this time. If Smaug is too strong, please retreat in time. I don't want any elves to sacrifice for such things. Dewey is a politician. He pays more attention to the interests of his group. So he would not kill Smaug for humanity like Gandalf did. This time he sent his son out, mainly to get closer to Ryan. It is convenient to be able to communicate with each other in the future, because the things brought by Ryan this time have fully proved its value, and he has now reclaimed the land around the King's City using those plants. Ryan certainly understands his approach, because he did so in the first few worlds. Legolas was very excited to write. He felt that he could finally leave his hometown to see the outside world this time. By the way, take the opportunity to leave your father and get in touch with Taolao. Yes, Ryan found that there was a slight relationship between Legolas and Toria. In the movie, Toria was supposed to meet Keely when he was beaten by Thranduil and looking for comfort. Keely saw Toria halfway between life and death after poisoning. Under this kind of yin and yang, the two talents developed feelings. None of these things have happened yet, so naturally the whole is different from the movie. After leaving Thranduil, Ryan found that the relationship between Legolas and Toriel was rising rapidly. When Ryan and they left the dark jungle, the two had escalated into formal couples. After entering the town of Cheng'u while taking advantage of the night, Ryan first went to find Bud, the descendant of the king of the valley. Bud is a middle-aged man who lives on ferry and trafficking. After learning of Ryan's intention, Bud persuaded Ryan not to do so, because he worried that Smaug would come to Cheng'u town to retaliate against the residents here. I swear I have a way to kill Smaug, and at the same time bring a better life to everyone. These elves can testify for me that I have that ability. Bud looked at the elves suspiciously, and Taolai stepped forward and told Badline brought the changes to the elves in the dark jungle. If this is the case, you need to show them to me. If you can do what you said, I'm willing to give you the position of the king of the river valley. Anyway, now I'm only a civilian. But you have to swear, even you can't bring Smorg to you if you fail. Bud lowered his head for a moment after listening to Toriel, and then raised his head and said to Ryan, after all, Bud's ancestors once lost the opportunity to shoot Smorg, which made his family humiliated, so now he just wants to defend the people here, and he has no great attachment to the throne. Okay, I promise you. Ryan assured him that he joined Bud's team and set off. When Bud left, he also carried the black arrow on his back. Ryan took out some gold and silver and gave it to Bud's wife as a reward when Bud went out with him. Thank you. Bud, who saw this scene, expressed his thanks on the way. Because they brought their horses when they came out, after a long time, they came to a ruined valley city. The city is now a dead ruin. After Smorg destroyed the city, some people tried to stay, but Smorg flew in the night to hunt them for food, especially pure girls. After such a few times, there was no one in the city. After roughly going into the city to check, Ryan began to release a large number of steam robots and began to rebuild the city. The sound of mechanical operation and the blazing fire of the boiler make this dead ruin come to life again. Bad was a little nervous about this, because he worried that it would attract Smorg. Under his explanation, Ryan figured out that Smorg actually can freely enter and leave the Lonely Mountain, which means that the group of dwarves in the movie looking for the secret door actually only hope to find the Akan gem through the secret road without disturbing the dragon. Gushan is not closed. Lane has only seen the film introduction with The Hobbit. He originally thought that the dragon would run out of the Lonely Mountain only after the plot began when the dwarf opened the door. But now it is not without solutions. Ryan took out several sets of Gaussian cannons made by Gaussian rifle principle mixed alchemy in the radiation world and placed them on several commanding heights near the isolated mountain. Yu reads the book www.yuukanzu.com and distributes the core of the armor-piercing projectile made of Valyria steel and a little bit of mithril after remelting the black arrow to each Gaussian gun. Leave it to us. After meeting the use of the Gaussian gun, Bud and the elves began to prepare for the exit of the Lonely Mountain. Because there is only one place where the entire Lone Mountain can fly out of the dragon, so long as they wait for Smorg to be irritated and fly out. Lane believes that as top shooters, they should be able to hit Smorg accurately. After more than a week, River Valley City has basically been packed up. But Smorg still did not come out of his cave. I think it may be because we have too few people, and there is really no way to seduce the evil dragon. Bud said his analysis after hearing Ryan's worry. But we can't wait here. River Valley City is about to be repaired. Smorg is there, and the city can't develop at all. So I decided to blow it up. It's not too difficult to get Smorg out of the cave. After seeing the Gaussian cannon with an armor-piercing projectile made with alchemy hitting a rock more than 10 meters thick, Bud was full of confidence in defeating Smorg. I think if we make enough movement at the gate of Gushan, Smorg will definitely come out. Because it is a grumpy evil dragon, it will never allow anyone to engage in things at his door. Okay, let's start tomorrow during the day. I'll find a way to get Smorg out, and then let's kill it together. Finally Ryan clapped. Chapter 370, Long. Early the next morning, when the sun had just risen and hit the gate of Lonely Mountain, Lane came here. After taking out a full 2 tons of explosive cherries, he found a place to hide himself and detonated the pile of explosive cherries. In the moment, the gravel of the gate of a lone mountain flew across, and even Lane, a few hundred meters away, felt the ground vibrate. Naturally, such a large amount of dynamic history cannot be felt. Just a few seconds after the explosion, an angry dragon chant came from the back of the mountain. The sound of instigating wings from far to near shows that the dragon will soon leave his den. Bad and the elves stared nervously at the gate of the Lonely Mountain, while Ryan pinched a thick yellow rune with his hands. Boom! The gate of Gushan was slammed open, and a giant dragon more than 140 meters long flew out of it. At this moment, Ryan threw out all the yellow charms in his hands and drank at the same time. Countless golden seal characters appeared out of thin air to surround Smorg, and the speed of the dragon suddenly slowed down a lot after touching these golden seal characters. Naturally, Smorg also found Ryan's position on it. Just when it was about to kill the little bug that couldn't withstand a blow in his eyes, he suddenly felt that a deadly attack was approaching. Unfortunately, at this time, it was no longer able to make dodge movements because of being restricted by Ryan's magic. Stab it! 6 golden red lights appeared almost simultaneously hitting Smorg, who was moving slowly in the air. After the alchemy treatment, the extremely tough long armor-piercing warhead suddenly broke through the protection of dragon skin under the acceleration of powerful electromagnetic force. Especially the 3 forts on the left of Smorg accurately hit the place where the scales of the dragon's left chest were knocked off more than 60 years ago. The high-speed hot bullet penetrated into Smorg's body and exploded under the influence of the rune, destroying the internal organs of its chest. After a wail, a huge dragon fell from the sky. After struggling a few times on the ground, The light in Smog dispersed a little, finally stopped breathing and lay there still. The eyes are still staring at the sky. Draw. Ryan launched the magic of life with ancient magic text. An off-white shadow floated from Smog and formed an apple-sized smoke ball on Ryan's chest. Rose Crystal sent a bud as a contact before this time flew over and sealed the smoke ball with an amethyst with silver wire. However, there is a very faint white flame in the middle of this smoke ball, but everyone who looks at this flame can feel the immortal power from it. This should be the indestructible fire. In the Lord of the Rings world, everything comes from the indestructible fire. The great Illuvita is an inexhaustible fire itself, as are the Viras, but they are regarded as gods. They prefer to use the flesh when they come to the world instead of appearing as a flame. In front of everyone, all the secrets of eternal life are here. After their death, the souls will return to rule the Villamander's temple of the underworld, where they will sleep, waiting for the final big movement of Illuvita. The creation of the species by Illuvita and the Vira depended on the indestructible fire, but only the Illuvita gave the elves an indestructible fire for the entire race, and the other Vira were not at the level, so they could only create short-lived species. Mere such as Gandalf can at most obtain the right to use the indestructible fire, and the ownership does not need to be considered. Is also only a big villain, Mogazkin, who has given the blood to send the indestructible fire to make evil dragons, flame demon, and even instilled power to Sauron. It is for this reason that Sauron, who won a part of the unending fire of Vira, can become the most powerful one in Mire. After killing the evil dragon, Ryan originally planned to use this dragon soul to baptize his 5 dragons. As a result, I did not expect to get such a windfall. Naturally, Ryan opened the space door for the first time to let Rose Crystal give this thing to Teacher Luo Zhen, because among the people he knew, only Teacher Luo Zhen would be interested in this thing and had the ability to study it. Did this kill Smog? When Rose Crystal returned from the space door, Bud and the elves also ran to Smog's side. While watching the dragon corpse as huge as a small hill, all the humans and elves present exclaimed. A shocked look appeared on everyone's face. Yes, we did, Lane said, looking at these shocked people. The times have changed, gentlemen. With the death of Sauron, the power of these evil dragons has gradually faded, and we have unprecedented power. So, we successfully killed the last giant dragon in Middle-earth. Bud showed a relief expression on his face after crying in pain at the dragon corpse. Then he kneeled down at Ryan and swore allegiance. Ryan proclaimed that he would be the vice president of the River Valley in the future, and he would assume all the rights of the kingdom when he was away. After the death of Smog, the construction of River Valley was back on track. Soon, many refugees who had previously fled to Cheng'u Town returned to River Valley City under Bud's call. After the mayor of Cheng'u Town found that his income had decreased, he once sent troops to try to arrest the people who emigrated to River Valley. As a result, Ryan's robot army was completely captured halfway. They even said that the whole process was very peaceful. After finding a group of invulnerable robots surrounding them, the soldiers directly discarded their weapons and raised their hands to surrender. After all, most of these soldiers are also from Cheng'u Town. Many of the people who moved to River Valley City before have a variety of relationships with them. After knowing the current status of the Valley City, they naturally were reluctant to fight. At the request of these people, Lane led Bud and a team of robots into the town of Cheng'u to catch the mayor and his dog legs. After a public trial, they were sentenced to exile. In the cheers of the people on both sides of the street, the mayor and his dog legs were driven out of Cheng'u Town. And Ryan took the opportunity to publicly announce that the treasures left by these people would not take a penny, and they would all be used for the construction of the town to buy people's hearts. Due to everyone's busyness, Cheng'u Town slowly shrinks, and it is no longer the town that has been deformed after receiving a large number of refugees. Instead, the identity of a material transit trade center near River Valley City was restored. www.mtlnovel.com. At the same time, River Valley City also recovered its popularity, and all buildings were renovated. In many places completely destroyed, new factories and houses were built. Ryan quickly cultivated a large group of skilled workers using the memory input device, and the production of River Valley City resumed. For 2 months, these abandoned places seemed to regain their former vitality, and caravans also appeared slowly. River Valley's first big business came from Siranjui, who ordered 2 energy towers and 300 robots from Lane through the bird. I always thought that your elves didn't like these booming machines, so I didn't recommend these things to you at the time. When Siranjui took a group of elves to pick up the goods, when facing the reason why the Elf King was good questions that were not taken out at the time, Lane replied, "I don't like it very much." Thramdui nodded and admitted, "But our population is too small. As long as we can save manpower, we will welcome, especially these robots. In the battle can greatly reduce the casualties of soldiers." After staying for 1 night, Thramdui returned to the forest with more than 100 robots with energy tower parts and a dozen or so engineers who helped to install. Of course, he also promised that regular caravans would come to River Valley to trade in the future. While saying goodbye to the Elven King and his party on the tower, Ryan was surprised to find that Legolas did not leave. It turned out that Thranduil allowed Legolas and that small group of elves to stay temporarily as channels of communication. This is what I asked for. Legolas shrugged. So I can be with Toria. Chapter 371, Thorin Oakshield. In the 4th month of the restoration of River Valley City, a strange team came along the road to River Valley City. Leading is a grey-robed old man with a cane, followed by 13 dwarfs. "We're here," said the old man in the grey robe, looking at the distant tower, wiping his forehead with sweat. "Su Olin, if you want to return to Gushan to rebuild the dwarf kingdom, calm your temper." Although everyone around you said that the king of the valley was very noble, he closed the Gushan after killing Smaug. At the same time, he claimed to wait. The real master of Gushan will not go to take possessions that are not his own until then. But you must not be as stingy as your ancestors, and the rewards must be given. Otherwise, the ungrateful reputation will be enough to ruin your country. Got it, Gandalf? The 1.5-meter-tall dwarf interrupted the old chatter. You have talked about these things all the way, and I will surely provide enough wealth as a reward. They have the ability to kill a dragon in an instant. I am not a fool and will not seek my own way. It can kill the dragon in an instant. The power can easily break through the broken mountain, and I am willing to pay for the country. That's good. Gandalf nodded and walked into the city gate. As soon as he entered, he was attracted by the bustling scenery in the city. At that time, River Valley City was the most prosperous than half of it now. I am more and more interested in the current River Valley king. Came to the gate of the palace. Gandalf and the dwarves were surprised to find that this was just a very simple 2-story building. In their impression, a rich national palace like Siang Valley should be magnificent, not as big as the school it passed by. After reporting with the guard at the door, the guard ran directly into the door to inform King Ryan of the valley. During this time, with the help of multiple world advisory boards, Ryan came up with a whole set of plans for Bud to deal with these, and he only had to sign the important words. The rest of the time was used to learn the previous ones. Regarding the knowledge of elves, even with the help of rose crystal as an external thinking circuit, Lane still finds it very difficult to learn. After all, these are the knowledge accumulated by the elves for tens of thousands of years. As he was immersed in the research, the guard at the door suddenly knocked on the door. After opening the door, Ryan learned that Gandalf and the dwarf team were now waiting at the door. "Please sit down, you can taste our juice and snacks." In the meeting room, Ryan and Rose Crystal brought juice and a few plates or snacks to the dwarf and Gandalf. Sitting on the sofa, a few dwarves seemed interested in sofa furniture. They wriggled on the sofa and tapped their fingers curiously. They didn't calm down until the lead dwarf coughed. "I'm King Iubathor in Oakshield. I hope I can go to Gushan to rebuild the kingdom now." The leading dwarf said his intention very simply, which was in line with the dwarf's honest character. "Of course, I will give you half of the treasure in the treasure house as a thank you for killing Smaug to retake the Lonely Mountain." "Why are you so generous?" Ryan was already ready to face an unreasonable dwarf king. "Of course, this may also be because Thorin Oakshield has not yet seen the Golden Mountains and Silver Seas in the Solitary Mountains, so the brain is still sober for the time being. Of course, I will send you personally." Ryan nodded and said to them after Rose Crystal climbed to his shoulders, "Well, let's go now." "You are really an upright king," Gandalf said when he got up. Under the of a small group of cavalry, they went out of the city to the entrance of the Lonely Mountain. "What's the situation?" When close to the entrance of Solitary Mountain, Solon was surprised to find that a large group of people were busy there, and even many elves he didn't like. "Isn't this the last dragon being shot down?" "Not many of us can deal with dragons, so we can only use the materials on it to hire elves in the dark jungle to help," Ryan said with a smile. "Fortunately, I will magic it can ensure that the dragon's body will not rot, so everyone can carefully handle the loss to a minimum." "Will I allow my people to purchase materials after I get back the Akan gem?" "We will pay for it with a weapon armor made," Thorin asked after looking at the dragon body exposed from the hidden canvas. "I'll talk about it at that time. It's only necessary to discuss it carefully." Ryan led them to the gate of the Lonely Mountain. Here, Ryan used magic to move the boulder to block it. Now under the command of his wand, a carriage-sized stone flew up and was thrown aside by the power of magic. The dwarves swallowed quietly as the stone hit the ground. "Okay, you can go in. You can call me when you are done." Ryan finished leaning on a large rock and sat there watching the dwarves walk in through the tunnel on the mountain. Gandalf did not follow in, but walked to Ryan with his wand and sat down, then asked curiously, "His Royal Highness, I am curious, how do you master the power of magic?" "Just call me Ryan directly." Ryan felt that it was a bit inappropriate for him to be honored by this tens of thousands of years old Maya. "I am a traveler from other worlds, so naturally I will be magical." "From other worlds?" After listening to it, Gandalf opened his eyes in shock and looked at Ryan. Ryan felt that there was an immortal flame beating in his eyes at this time. "Relax, I'm not a predator," Ryan said. "The way I get benefits is to promote the development of that world, so that I can get benefits from all the world for a long time. I will never do anything like plundering chickens and eggs. You see everything I did in the River Valley." As for why they are willing to reinstate the dwarves, they are the top miners, just like I can switch from elves to the technology of the Lord of the Rings. I also have confidence in the source. Constant goods were exchanged from them for things like the mithril gemstone I needed. I believe in you, and I welcome you on behalf of Middle-earth. Neighing. At this time, the fire in Gandalf's eyes dissipated. He may have just communicated with Avira, and Ryan passed the review of the gods of this world, and was free to do business here in the future. After that, the two began to exchange their knowledge, which is different from what they imagined. Gandalf is happy to share his magic and combat skills. According to him, the just side must help each other. Only in this way can we survive the dark forces and defeat them. www.mplnovel.com. Faced with Gandalf's generosity, Ryan is also embarrassed to hide. However, because Gandalf as a Mire had a lot of knowledge that didn't have much effect on him, he ended up only learning about the method of making Madonna Rose and several methods of internal training. Because neither of them are ordinary people, they exchanged all the knowledge they wanted to exchange in just 6 or 7 hours. It wasn't until this time that a cold sweat and trembling Sorin Oakshield took the subordinates out of the lonely mountain. Each of them was pulling a big cart, which was filled with all kinds of gold and silver treasures. Sorry, we are late. When I entered the vault just now, I was fascinated by the gold. I finally broke free from it. Sorin Oakshield very directly said what happened. So how did you break free? Gandalf asked with interest. I stood in the vault for a long time, and then from the illusion I saw the king of the valley waved through the walls of the lone mountain easily and beat me on the ground. Then I woke up all at once. Solon said, also glanced at Tryon. Yes, the illusion you see should be true. If you gossip, I would really do it. The wall of the magical protection of the lonely mountain can't save you. After Ryan raised his hand, an electromagnetic gun in orange-red light directly penetrated the thick city wall. Several dwarves suddenly felt that they were indeed escaping from the dead. Anyway, you just wake up, my friend. Gandalf looked at Sorin. Chapter 372, Supreme Lord of the Rings. Since you are really willing to keep your promises, then I don't need that much wealth, Ryan said, looking at these dozen cars of gold and silver jewelry. The wealth on the car can almost make up for what Smaug had robbed from the valley town. As long as you are willing to sign a long-term trade agreement with us, then you only need to give me some mithril as a reward. By the way, there is the gem necklace that Thranduil ordered from you. Because you are all my friends, so I hope to resolve the conflict between you. You are very generous, Your Royal Highness, Sorin said carefully with a bow. But I will never be able to forgive the behavior of those elves who are helpless. Thranduil did not die at the time, but he was the king of the elves, not the king of your dwarves. In the previous wars, the elves died too many people, and they were already dead. Plus you first buckled the gemstones and destroyed the friendship between you. That's why they didn't send troops. Ryan explained that these were all heard from Legolas when he chatted before. If you say this, I think that when my ancestor had a dragon syndrome, it was really possible to be blindfolded by gold gems. But I thought that the dead people could not forgive them. Solon said, but now I also want to. That's it. I can reconcile them for the future development of Gushan. But this does not mean that I forgive them. Well, as long as you don't see the enemy like you do now. After all, there are far more enemies around us watching. The internal disagreement is fatal in this case, Ryan said helplessly. He also knew that he was dead, so many people cannot meet each other with a smile. Just mediate them not to look at each other like enemies. Yeah, just reconciliation. Gandalf also nodded in satisfaction. Soon, Sorin took out 50 to 60 kilograms of mithril ingots and handed them to Ryan, which is more than 80% of their inventory. At the same time, he also handed over the necklace ordered by the elves in a box. After handing over everything, Sorin returned to Gushan with his men. Now he is busy writing letters to recall the people who were in exile everywhere. Ryan and the cavalry returned to the valley town with their treasures. After returning to the palace, Lane called Legolas directly. Recently, Legolas had a very nourishing life. He faced Smaug in the first battle of the Dark Jungle. After the inspection, he found out one of the 3 shells that had hit the dragon's heart was fired by him. According to local rules, he can add the title of Dragon Slayer in front of his title, which makes him feel very honored. Not to mention that during this period of time, he was facilitated many trades with elves in the Valley City, which has helped his compatriots. At the same time, far away from his father's sight, his relationship with Taobao quickly heated up. After these conditions are combined, he is in a very good mood. When he appeared in front of Ryan, he could see an excited expression on his face. When he learned that Ryan was looking for him, hoping he would return to the Dark Jungle, his emotions immediately fell. I don't know what to think of Thranduil at this time. Fortunately, he felt better after he knew it was his mother's relic. Legolas's memory of his mother's memory is very small, but this does not prevent him from missing his mother, especially when he has a bad relationship with his father. Ryan also hopes to let Legolas improve the father-son relationship a little. When he returns the relics, after Legolas set off, Lane began to count the treasures he had just obtained today. After observing with eagle eyes, he was surprised to find that there was something in the treasure with extremely powerful magic radiation. This is. Ryan pulled out a plain gold ring after pulling away the gold coins covering the upper layer. Suddenly there was an ominous hunch. Put the gold ring on a slate floor, and then pointed with a wand and read, flame. The flames burned, and words like fire appeared inside and outside the ring. Supreme Lord of the Rings. How could this thing be here? Ryan was confused. In the original text, Bilbo got it from Guru when he passed the Misty Mountains. Now the dwarves didn't even ask Bilbo, where did this ring come from? Early the next morning, Ryan took Rose Crystal to find the dwarf under the pretext of discussing the terms of trade. For security reasons, the Lord of the Rings was carried by Rose Crystal. Because he found that this ring only had a fatal attraction to the flesh and blood creatures of this world, Ryan was minimally affected after getting the ring, and the Rose Crystal as a doll was almost not affected by the ring. After signing the good terms of trade, Ryan took out the ring and inquired, saw the ring. Keely recognized that it was obtained in the Misty Mountains. At that time, he accidentally dropped a cave under Goblin's Hunt, and later hacked a little monster to get the ring. He felt that the ring might have fallen off. When he went to the car to load the treasure, Lane knew that this should be the soul of Sauron in the ring. The dwarf was more difficult to corrupt, so he chose to leave the dwarf. However, the dwarves were unsatisfied with this plain ring cast with a little gold without knowing it. Keely directly said that even if this ring was given to Ryan, he now has a lot of treasures, which is no longer a rare gold. After leaving the Lonely Mountain, Lane found Gandalf and told him that he had obtained the Supreme Ring. Originally he wanted to give the Lord of the Rings to Gandalf, but Gandalf jumped in horror and refused. Don't seduce me, I don't want to be a dark demon alive. The way the Lord of the Rings penetrates my heart is through mercy, the heart of the weak and the power to improve the world. Don't seduce me. I dare not accept it, even just keeping it, not using it, I dare not. The temptation to hold it will disintegrate my strength. I still need strength, and there are still many difficulties and obstacles in front of me. What should I do with this thing? Should I throw it away? Ryan said, holding the ring in distress. The doll next to him looked at the ring with disgust. Probably because Ryan is a foreigner, this ring can't accurately know Ryan's heart, so the temptation given is the universal eternal life for humans. But this temptation is of no value to Lane, who now has mastered the channel of immortality. If a normal person can directly live forever, who would like to be a dog to obtain immortality? www.mtlnovel.com. You can actually resist the corruption of the Lord of the Rings. Gandalf looked at Ryan in amazement. Can I ask you to go to the Doomsday Volcano to destroy this ring? Now that Moto and Kiriman's darkness has not fully recovered, you should be able to sneak in with your ability. As far as I know, the Villas have claimed that Sauron is a human problem to solve. If I throw the ring into the Doomsday Volcano, will it cause their dissatisfaction? Ryan asked with a frown. You are now the king of the River Valley, and you have also obtained the permission of the Viera when you come to this world. So you will naturally be regarded as a member of humanity in this world. The reason why the Viera have such a request is because during the first and second epochs, Viera interfered in too many affairs in Middle-earth, but the result was counterproductive. And what you did after coming here was in line with their hopes, and they were happy to destroy Sauron's darkness against Middle-earth. It succeeded, because you defeated Sauron and could also guide the residents of Middle-earth to fight against evil and walk towards the light. As they said these words, Gandalf's eyes shone brightly, as if illuminated by the flames from his body. This means that when he said this, it really represented the will of the Villas. And if you do this, the Villas will give you the corresponding gift. Gandalf's last sentence made Ryan determined. He immediately stood up and declared that he would go to the Doomsday Volcano to completely destroy Sauron. Anyway, if you think this kind of thing is too dangerous, you can still come back, but once you succeed, maybe you can get a gift from the level of Genesis God. How could Ryan feel that he can miss it? Chapter 373, Go to Mordor. After setting up the job at hand, Ryan set off with Rose Crystal the next night. From the valley to the south, you can reach the Doomsday Volcano. According to Gandalf's introduction and the map drawn, Lane knew that the distance was about 2,000 kilometers. Fortunately, Ryan's flying broom is a home version broom that is good for long-distance travel, and can fly for a long time at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. On the road, Ryan flies for 20 hours a day. The strengthened body can fully support this high-strength hurry. When he and Rose Crystal arrived at the Black Gate, more than a day had passed since the departure. This is much faster than it took the Guardian squad in the novel to arrive for half a year. This aspect is due to the fact that the flight is really fast, and on the other hand, it is because at this time Sauron's power has not been fully restored, and it is safe enough from the valley to the air of Mordor. Ryan can go straight to his destination in a straight line, without the need for various detours and battles like the Guardian squad in the novel. At this time, the power of Mordor was not fully awakened, and Sauron did not understand the spells from other worlds, so he did not prepare accordingly. Ryan easily crossed the Black Door directly over the Black Door, but not far after entering the Black Door, the air began to be filled with evil magic. For safety's sake, Ryan gave up his flight options and penetrated from the ground. Fortunately, the flight just had bypassed the most difficult path, and because at this time Sauron had not fully recovered his strength. Although the sky above Mordor is covered by black clouds, there is still a faint sunlight that can shine through the gaps in the clouds. Relying on these faint sunlight, Lane found himself on the edge of a huge plain. The whole plain is only grey with shimmer. The black smoke traveled through the ground and a ditch, and the stinky smoke kept coming out of the cracks of the earth. More than 60 kilometers away, the Doomsday Volcano is located, and its surroundings are almost all covered with volcanic ash. The huge volcanic cone towers up to the sky. At this time, there was no magma pouring out, as horrible and terrifying as a sleeping beast. Behind it is a huge black shadow that extends all the way to the foot of the Ember Mountains. Therefore, there must be a large area of land east of Mordor that can provide sufficient resources. Otherwise, in the last part of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, so many armies starting from Mordor cannot use Mordor as a rallying point, because this place seems to have a fight with the radiant sea that radiates the world, and cannot support a huge army. The only possibility is that the land in the east is very large and can bring a lot of things to support the huge and evil army. This dead plain is called the Goguros Plain. Just when Ryan was in the air, he thought it should be very flat. But after landing on the ground, it was discovered that the plains of Goguros were full of large and small potholes. It seemed that when this place was still soft mud, there were countless gravel falling all over the ground, and it was bumpy everywhere. There is a circle of rocks next to the largest pothole, and there are many cracks extending from the middle to the outside. In short, this place is very suitable for people to go silently from one shelter to the next, and even the most conscientious sentinel can hardly find anyone invading here. It took a whole day for Ryan to carry the rose crystal to the foot of the volcano. The closer to the volcano, Ryan felt that his soul felt more repressed. This may be Sauron established a similar evil residence in this area. Field magic. Rose crystal is more sensitive to the magic suppression here. Halfway through, she can no longer maintain her flight and can only be carried forward by Ryan. At the beginning, Ryan could quickly get on the road by light work, but he could only walk on his feet near the foot of the volcano. At the same time, in this place, all the magic requires 5 times or even 10 times the magic power and spiritual power. It's still that Sauron hasn't fully recovered. Ryan thought, I really don't know how the 2 tortured hobbits in history have traveled this distance. They have neither the power of magic nor their bodies strong. At the same time, the soul must endure continuous corruption of the Supreme Ring. Perhaps because of this, their journey can be called epic. Lean walked forward while thinking, and found a way. It stretched from the west, turned around the volcano like a snake, and finally came to the west of the volcano. The top of the road leads to a dark entrance in the upper part of the volcanic cone, which can directly reach the flame hall of Sauron's forged ring. Feeling that Sauron had a little intellectual disability at this point, how could a normal person build a path directly to his vital point? Of course, as Gandalf said, Sauron is very arrogant. He thought that no one would be willing to destroy the Supreme Ring, and few people knew how to destroy it. Ryan thought it might be the case with all the villains. So was Sauron, and so was Voldemort. It took several hours for Lane to follow the road to the end of the Banshine Road, and the door of Summer's Knoll, the Hall of Flame, finally appeared in front of him. At this time, he felt very tired, because this road was built on an active volcano, and many orcs were left on the road to repair the road as the volcano erupted. In order to avoid them, Ryan can only use magic to hide himself. In this harsh environment, the super strong magic output naturally makes him feel overdrawn. The condition of Rose Crystal is even worse, because she and Ryan are from the same source of magic. She minimizes her mana consumption along the way, and then provides all the magic to her, which makes her look a little dying now. The door was dark and hot, and there was a dull noise coming out, like the mouth of a monster. Ryan was a little uneasy, and even had an urge to turn around and return. But thinking of this as the last hurdle, he still gathered courage into the darkness. Of course, the greatest strength for his spirit was the emergency escape function of Wanji grocery store. Rushed into the gate. At first Ryan couldn't see anything, but after unbearably overdrawing the magical power to release the shadow magic, finally found the right way. www.mtlnovel.com rushed out of the darkness. The first time he rushed out of the darkness, Ryan saw a red light rushing up and hit the top of the cave. With these lights, he found himself in a tunnel in the volcanic cone, with many fissures not far in front. The dazzling red light in the cracks sometimes flourished, and sometimes dimmed back into the darkness. At the same time, the cave was filled with a low, rumbling sound as if a huge machine was running. At the forefront of this tunnel is the magma pool in the Doomsday Volcano. Just throw the ring in. Okay, here we are, Lane said to the puppet on his back. Although they didn't say anything because they rushed along the way, Ryan might not be able to get here if it wasn't for Rose Crystal's magic supply. For the puppet, she feels similar to human suffocation after extracting a lot of magic power from her body. But in order not to worry Ryan, Rose Crystal bit her lips tightly to keep quiet after feeling uncomfortable. Throw it by you. This honor is what you deserve, said Ryan. Held the Rose Crystal behind her in her arms, and the Rose Crystal pulled out the Supreme Ring from her arms. At this time, Sauron finally felt wrong. Under his summoning, all the orcs began to rush to the Doomsday Volcano. At the same time, the Lord of the Rings also emitted a dazzling light, as if it were made of pure flame. But it was too late. At this time, Rose Crystal ignored the growing temptation sound and directly raised his hand to the magma pool. The Lord of the Rings fell from the doll's small hands, hit a few turns in the air, and fell into the magma of the Doomsday volcano below the location of the two. Chapter 374, Destroy the Lord of the Rings. The Supreme Lord of the Rings fell into the magma pool and floated on the magma for a few seconds. Then the clatter turned into golden water. At this moment, an angry roar was mixed with numerous messy sounds. The flame burst out, licking the top of the cave. Before the end of the volcano, there were some small earthquakes due to the volcano's recovery. But now it has become an amazing giant earthquake, and the whole volcano is shaking. Ryan felt that all his suppression had disappeared after entering the Golgoth Plains at this time, so he immediately took out his flying broom and flew out of the Doomsday volcano with a rose crystal. After rushing outside, he discovered that the scene outside was probably the most magnificent picture he had ever seen since he was born. Here is Sauron's evil old nest, with extremely strong towers and fortresses, complicated caves, huge squares and dungeon, even a solid gate made of steel and gold crystal. But now all this is gone. All the artificial buildings were destroyed, the walls shattered and melted, and fell to the ground. The dense smoke and mist soared up to the sky until the top hit the sky, and fell back to the ground like a rainstorm. Finally, roar came from the earth shook, the plain blew up many cracks, and the Doomsday volcano behind them erupted. The flame rushed to the sky from its top, thunder and lightning flashed in the sky, and the torrential black rain poured down like a flood. At the very center of the storm, all evil creatures tried to escape, but flake and the melt like the earth disappeared in the air. We succeeded. We saved a lot of people again. In the arms of Ryan came cheers from the little puppets. In fact, Rose Crystal didn't care how many people were saved. She just saw that Ryan was happy because of this matter. Yeah, this is also the most difficult time to save the world, Ryan said wearily. I want to find a soft bed and get a good night's sleep. I think you think so too. The little doll nodded madly in agreement. So Ryan flew directly to the west on a sweep, and it didn't take much time to go to Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor. This is a cascade city built on the mountain, extremely magnificent. Backed by white mountains, the famous white trees are planted at the highest level of Minas Tirith. The city's defenses are very strong. When entering the city, Ryan saw the city's high stone walls and mitre silver doors. After entering the city, Lane discovered that the city was messy. A large number of citizens flocked to the street to discuss the abnormalities that had come from Mordor before. Fortunately, the hotels are operating normally, and Ryan quickly found a high-end hotel and moved in. After paying a few gold coins and telling the boss not to disturb, he went to the room and read a new bed to clean up and fell asleep, while Rose Crystal slept directly on his stomach after he lay down and patted his head and fell asleep. In his sleep, Ryan felt that he was in an endless white light. It is full of vitality here, giving Ryan a feeling that the fetus is in the mother's womb. This is Elaine's current soul strength can basically guarantee the control of dreams. This inexplicable dream can only show that something has penetrated into his dream. But after repeated inspections, he found nothing wrong. The only thing that was abnormal was that he couldn't wake up anyway. Distant guests. Please don't be nervous. A grand voice came from all directions, but it was not as harsh as imagined. Even after hearing the first voice, Ryan felt his soul calm down at once. Are you? Ryan knew that something that could invade his soul to such a point could kill him or distort his spirit without effort, but the other party did not. This shows that the thing that caused all this now should be in good faith, so he simply gave up the defense and asked directly, Wo, Eluvita, creator of all things. Because you wiped out the evil, so I want to reward you. So, foreign guests, what do you most hope for in your heart? Said the magnificent voice. I want to gain knowledge. Rain does not intend to hide his inner thoughts in front of the creator of this world. Because knowledge equals power. With power I can protect everything I want to protect, people and things. Very good. The voice came again. I have observed that you already have immortal power from other worlds and can form your own indestructible fire in the future, so I decided to give you the knowledge equivalent to Maya and hope that you will not be blinded by power in the future. In addition, Aminzu also opened the door to you, and you are qualified to step on that sacred land. As soon as the words fell, Ryan woke up from her dream. When he woke up, he felt something was pressing on his stomach, and after raising his head a little, he saw Rose Crystal leaning on his stomach and chose a very comfortable posture, covering the blanket and sleeping. She also worked hard along the way. Thinking of Ryan lying down again, closed her eyes and began to recall the dream just now. Most of the things in the dream have disappeared. He can only remember that a very high spirit gave him a victory over Sauron. After entering the state of meditation, Lane found a lot of knowledge in his mind, and it took at least half a year to digest it. Is different from those gods in the world of the Song of Ice and Fire. The innate gods in this world can only be called true gods, no matter from the perspective of power or personality. Even Lane's current level cannot directly visualize them, otherwise it will cause irreversible damage to the soul. That's why he can't recall many details in his dream anyway. This is because the local gods directly erased that memory in order to avoid hurting him. At least the knowledge is at hand. There is a good direction for what to do next. Thinking of here, Ryan simply began to meditate on the bed to analyze the knowledge. The donated batch of knowledge is a complete knowledge system, although with Ryan itself the knowledge system is different. but this method of using high-level power is still very precious to him. At least after having a reference, it is much more convenient to sum up his own way of power promotion. Even if his current strength is not enough, he can still get great gains from it and improve his strength to a step up. www.mtlnovel.com. When the sunlight outside the window becomes dark again, the doll finally wakes up. Seeing that Ryan was awake, Rose Crystal smiled a little embarrassed. "Have you rested yet?" The puppet nodded, blushing, and she was a little shy about the snooze just now. "Then we will have something to eat, and then we will go back to River Valley City." After asking the boss for a sumptuous banquet, Lane started to ask the boss what happened to him during the past 2 days. When the boss looked at them, he was surprised to see Ryan and Rose Crystal swallowing a lot of food into the belly in an elegant but fast pose. He thought Rose Crystal was a dwarf, not paying attention to what Ryan said at all. The crisp sound until a gold coin was thrown on the table board brought him back to his soul. "Dear guests, the shadow of Mordor is gone. A giant eagle tells us about the destruction of Mordor. So under the order of the regent, our army is preparing to recapture Osgiliath. The news is very good. The orcs were in chaos because of the destruction of Mordor. Our army has easily killed their orcs several times, and they will soon be able to recover the city so that we can restore the previous. That glorious age is over," the shop owner said in an extremely cheerful tone. After all, the sword that had been hanging on their heads for so many years had finally disappeared, which was really a very worthy celebration. "It's really good news." Ryan echoed that when he settled the bill with his boss after eating. He took Rose Crystal out of the city and stepped on the broom. Chapter 375, Battle of the Fifth Army. When Ryan returned to the Valley of the Valley, he had learned that Sauron had been destroyed by special means of the elves. When he hurried back to the palace, he saw Gandalf waiting for him. "A huge shadow left," Gandalf said to Ryan. Then he smiled. The laughter was like music, like Ganlin after a long drought. At this moment he was no longer the old man, but showed a trace of Maya's power. "Oh, this thing is for you." Gandalf pulled out a simple silver crown from his arms, inlaid with a few very beautiful gems. "The crown of the River Valley. You should also have your own crown as the king of the River Valley." Bud donated the remains of the old crown. Legolas brought some beautiful white stones, and finally the dwarves worked overtime to use the best silver. "Made this crown for you. I know you are simple in nature, but now the River Valley and Gushan are back to life, and Sauron is also destroyed. You should also have a formal coronation ceremony." Ryan nodded after listening to these words. But he invited elves and dwarves and decided to take this opportunity to turn this coronation into a grand party. Gandalf also decided to stay and return to Amin Zoo after the coronation ceremony. So that afternoon, many people saw many birds flying with letters in all directions. Past letters from the coronation ceremony. After the first month, the day before the coronation ceremony, Thranduil took his army to Cheng'u town and settled down. At the same time, Dan II of the Iron Hills also came to the Lonely Mountain with more than 500 heavy dwarf warriors. This is because Thorin knew that Ryan had invited the elves of the Dark Jungle, so he asked his cousin to bring someone to help him. At least not worse than the elves on a disc. Lane went to greet the elves first. As a result, he was surprised to find that 2,000 elves brought a full of 1,000 robots in Cheng'u town. Each robot is painted with beautiful patterns by elves, and looks like a moving gallery. At the same time, in addition to more than 100 elves also carrying bows and arrows, all other elves are carrying high-pressure air guns. After careful observation, Ryan found that their high-pressure air guns are different from humans. The rate of fire is slower than humans, but the range is farther than humans. Later in the conversation, I learned that the elves of this world are also mortal. Because their bodies are stronger, they can shoot more arrows than humans in a battle, but it does not mean that they will not be tired. So when it was found that the effective range of the air gun was no less than the bow and arrow and the lethality was stronger than the bow and arrow, the elves completed the dress-up at the fastest speed, and their knowledge level also helped them improve the air gun to make this weapon more convenient for their own use. There is also an unexpected joy in doing this, that is, the number of bullets carried at the same weight can be more than the number of arrows. As for the shortcomings that air gun parts need to be maintained precisely, it is not a matter for elves at all. Thranduil was pleased to tell Ryan that they had used a robot as a meat shield elf to hide behind and cleared a large forest, and in this process, 0 casualties were achieved. At the same time, these robots can also save them a lot of debris time and can be used to do more meaningful things. In the future, our kingdom will work hard to study and develop these machines. Finally, Thranduil concluded that Ryan did not know what to do at this time. The elves of industrial development are absolutely rare in the world. After setting up the elves, Ryan took a team of carriages to Lonely Mountain again. The dwarves also gladly accepted the magical plants and supporting mechanical equipment. With these things, they completed some boring repetitive labor. They have enough time to dig up treasures or elaborate equipment. However, their choice is very different from the elf style. In their hands, the robot becomes smaller in order to adapt to the mine, but it is larger in weapon caliber. For example, several forts are now built on the wall at the gate of Gushan, and 4 large caliber steam mortar guns are placed on it. At the same time, The air guns in the hands of the dwarf guards had a shorter range and a slower rate of fire. But the huge caliber can show strong power in close range. The dwarves of the Iron Hills now live in a lonely mountain. When Ryan entered, he saw Thorin bragging to his cousin these magical machines, plants and weapons. Looking at the envious eyes of Dan too, Ryan knew that a new customer had come again. The carriage brought by Lane contained a lot of meat and wine. Because the elves were stationed directly in the town of Cheu, he had hoarded these things before, and just handed the keys of the warehouse door to the elves. The dwarves live on their own lonely mountain, so Ryan can only send these welcome gifts. Looked at the dwarf happily eating barbecue and drinking wine. Ryan was a little worried that they would not be able to catch up with their own coronation ceremony tomorrow, but Thorin Oakshield assured Ryan that he said that this wine would not make the dwarves drink drunk, or even say that these wines at the banquet today are more than enough. The dwarves moistened their throats. Every dwarf who eats spicy barbecue and craft beer praises these things, but also praises the generosity of the king of the river valley. From here, Ryan also found that he could use spices and beer as a fist export product to the dwarves. Early the next morning, with the blessing of everyone, Gandalf wore the crown of the river valley for Ryan, but the coronation ceremony was just over, and everyone was preparing for the feast. A warning came from the far post, and the orcs attacked. I heard that the orcs were attacking, and the dwarves decided to join the war because they were feuds. The elves also decided to fight in the same way. On the one hand, they did not want to lose face in front of the dwarves. On the other hand, I want to try what level these robots are. So when 3 earthworms opened the big hole and sent out more than 20,000 half-orcs, human, dwarf elf coalition forces also prepared more than 3,000 robots and 3,000 troops into battle. Because most of the creatures in this world do not have magic, half-orcs and ogres can't get close under the intensive bullet storage and artillery shooting. Many wolves tried to use the speed to rush up, but still could not keep up with the speed of the bullet. Their bodies even built a high wall 300 or 400 meters from the front of the position. Especially the 4 giant cannons in Gushan, each shell can clear a large group of orcs. The giant beasts with high hopes from the orcs fell down, and in front of the flying shrapnel, the heavy armor and the paper were no different. On the other hand, the orc army trying to sneak into River Valley City was also hit by headaches. As soon as they appeared on the mountain ridge, the ogres were directly destroyed by the Gaussian cannon operated by the Legolas team. Even a stone did not vote. The famous iron-headed baby was also directly killed by a Gaussian cannonball. www.mplnovel.com. Soon the orcs who rushed down the city were blown up by potato torpedoes, and then they were shot by a steam machine gun. The whole army did its best. Originally the orc side also tried to use bats to regain its strategic advantage, but as a design from future generations, the machine guns on all steam robots are rare defense. Dense bullet rain made these bats dominated by melee dare not to fall. Afterwards, they were shot down by the elves. As the half-orcs retreated, the giant eagle and the transfiguration bion also arrived on the battlefield. They thought they were a fire brigade, and found that the situation on the battlefield was far better than their imagination. But their arrival also lowered the morale of the orc side to the freezing point. The orcs on the battlefield began to flee wildly, and the pursuit began. Lynn pointed out the location of Asog on the hilltop in the distance for Legolas, who was operating a Gaussian gun. Legolas directly hit Asog, who tried to save the defeat. After Thorin rushed uphill on a sheep, only one head and 2 legs of Asog were found under the banner of the orc, and the other parts were broken by the high temperature and pressure of the shells. The battle of the 5 armies ended in the absolute victory of the human, elf, and dwarf coalition. More than 20,000 orc troops put into the battlefield could barely reach 3 digits afterwards. On the coalition side, only dozens of robots were destroyed, and single-digit soldiers were sacrificed. Because of this, the crown of the River Valley was later called the Crown of Victory or the Crown of Blood. To commemorate this victory over evil forces,